Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to see so many in our joining us this afternoon. It is September 27th at 1 o'clock, and that means it's council time. So welcome to all. We have all of our representatives in attendance, and therefore I will call this meeting to order and ask you all to join us in a moment of reflection as we consider the business before us. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of interest in any of the agenda items today? Noting, Council, yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will need to declare a conflict of interest on the consent agenda item 7.1C, the Meaford Golf Course Phase 2 development.
Thank you for that. Is there anything else? Noting that anyone can declare at any time in the proceedings should the need arise. And with that, we'll move into announcements. And I will ask around the horseshoe if there's any announcements. I know the Deputy Mayor has some. And Councillor Greenfield, wonderful. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you very much again, Your Worship. On Friday morning, Councillor Kentner and I had the privilege of attending a very impressive event held at Lakeview Cemetery. Council, where we call a few months ago now, Peter Russell came to make a presentation to announce the new Tree Trust branch for Meaford, and thanks to the generosity of the Meaford Rotary Club and member of the club, Liz Harris, donations have been made to allow for the care of 3 trees at our cemetery. One legacy tree is a 135-year-old sugar maple, and that was tended to in June, and that tree will live on now for many more years. An interesting point, this tree at that age and that size will store the amount of carbon in 1 year equal to 275 saplings. If anyone is interested in learning more about the Tree Trust organization or the care of legacy trees, you can reach out to Peter Russell at meafordtreetrust.ca. My second announcement is in relation to the Meaford Job Fair. We did mention it at our last meeting, but some further details. The job fair will take place on Thursday, October the 7th between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. at the Meaford and St. Vincent Community Centre. Full-time, part-time, seasonal, and student positions are all available. You can register online if you are a job seeker at ymcaowensound.on.ca/Meaford Job Fair. And it's recommended that you do pre-register to guarantee a spot so that you can have an interview on site with any of the businesses present. And a proof of vaccination will be required to attend this event. The job fair is a joint partnership between the municipality of Meaford, the Meaford Chamber of Commerce, Employment Ontario, RT07, and Y Employment Services. And my last announcement is on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce to recognize that this year is the 13th annual Meaford Dragons event, which will take place live here at Meaford Hall. And right now the call is out for contestants, and the deadline for that is also October the 7th. So if anyone knows of a fledgling business or has an idea for a new business or is expanding a current business, you would be eligible for Meaford Dragons as a contestant. And if you'd like further information, please go to www.meafordchamber.ca, or you can call the Chamber office at 519-538-1640. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and over to you, Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of things briefly. Meaford's own Big Canoe On Sunday, October 17th at 1 p.m., they're sponsoring the Big Canoe Shoreline Cleanup, starting at David Johnson Beach, and all the way down to Boucher Street. They're inviting volunteers to come and help clean up that beautiful area of waterfront. Apparently, gloves and bags will be available, and again, it's just an opportunity to observe a great stretch of waterfront that belongs to our municipality. And also, Saturday, October 16th, the day prior to that, is the grand opening / reopening of our Meaford Public Library. 1 p.m. At the library, obviously. I understand our MPP, Mr. Walker, is going to be there, and it's an occasion we've been waiting for quite some time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greenfield. And I have a few as well. September 30th, Thursday, is the first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation with our Indigenous communities. This is an important day to reflect on the history of residential schools and understand the hardships that both the children and their families endured. On Thursday, our municipality will fly an Every Child Matters flag at Market Square and will lower the flags to half-mast to mourn the lives lost. Our water tower will change its lights to orange in respect of the day. And this is also Orange Shirt Day, which is a day to raise awareness about the impact of the residential school system had on Indigenous communities. And so I encourage you to join me in wearing an orange shirt and to take a moment to reflect on the significance of the day and how important this reconciliation is. Also, on Thursday, this September 30th, is the official opening ceremony of the Georgian Bay Community School. As everyone has anticipated this, it's a wonderful and much-needed community asset that offers kindergarten to grade 12 students and includes the critical important early on center. I will be attending officially to kick off open the school, and certainly welcome everyone to join me there. The province of Ontario's proof of vaccination is now in effect. For the municipality, this means anyone visiting Meaford and the St. Vincent Arena and the Community Centre or Meaford Hall will be asked to show identification and proof of being fully vaccinated to enter either that or meet one of the limited number of exemptions that have been identified by the province. Visiting our website, COVID-19 Open and Closed, will give you more information. On Sunday, yesterday, we celebrated the reopening of Wagner Hall with all of the renovations being done. It really is a beautiful facility, and it was a great day for the community to gather and celebrate the reopening and to observe the pride that our residents in that area have in their community hall and how welcome this renovation has been for them. I also just wanted to take a moment to recognize the work that has been done on the rehabilitation of the shoreline and green space along Bayfield Street from Fred Raper Park to Collingwood Street. It is now completed and it looks great. Naturally Green Landscaping is a local company that has completed the construction work and the drainage improvement and has done such a terrific job of placing the boulders all level and to reduce erosion concerns and the loss of shoreline. So that is completed, and of course our other construction projects will be still underway till the end of November. With that, unless there's any other announcements, okay, Councillor Kentner, please go ahead.
Thank you, through your worship. Yes, I should have mentioned the Georgian Bay Coyotes had their 10th annual cross-country run on Saturday at the green space on Aiken Street, and it truly is a remarkable facility for our young people, and track and field is such an exciting thing that is not available that readily to a lot of our young people. And I had the distinct honor of putting the medals over their heads as they stood on a straw podium, and but great spirit. And I met people from all over Grey and Bruce who were here with runners for the event.
Good.
Thank you.
Great to see that back in action. This brings us down to number 5 on our agenda, which is public participation. And we welcome public to come and join us in our council meetings to present presentations of topics of interest to them, to present deputations on items that will be on the agenda, the current agenda, or to ask questions of council and to present their views. This is a responsibility that we enjoy, and we certainly appreciate your participation today. We just ask that if you have something to contribute to the agenda, that you please get in touch with the clerk's office on the morning of the agenda, or the morning of the meeting, rather, so by noon today. So we have 2 presentations today, and the first one is the water supply at Knox Presbyterian Church. And we're very pleased to welcome Henry Reinders. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship, and Deputy Mayor and the rest of Council. It's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon, and thank you for having us. I do have a few slides that I don't see yet. Technical difficulties. Always a lot of fun. So I'm here today to talk to you, we might as well get started, to talk to you today and bring to your attention a concerning problem that we have at Knox Presbyterian Church, which is the church located beside the new church, the new school build, which we're all delighted to have here in Meaford, as are we at Knox Church. However, there are some issues that have been raised since it has been built that I want to bring to your attention, specifically with the water supply to our church. You can just bring up the next slide. So to give you some history and context, first of all, I want to tell you that Knox Presbyterian Church was built in 1994. It was on land that was donated by John and Charlie McDonald, very generous of them to do that. It's a slab-on-grade construction, which means that all the utilities, all the water lines, the hydro, the venting for heating, etc., are all placed on the ground or in the ground, and after careful checking, it was all covered with cement, and then that's upon which the church was built. The next slide shows the lot lines, and it's maybe difficult to see for some of you who are looking at this, so that's why I put 2 pictures up, one with the overhead view from satellite and one with the actual lot lines that's clearer to see. You can see that the church is located on its own lot, and the parking lot and the circular drive are all part of that lot, but what is not part of our lot is the entrance off of Grey Road 7 into the church. And that entrance now belongs to the Blue Water Board of Education as part of their purchase of the property where the church was built. I'm not sure why this was arranged this way. I can only assume that the McDonalds wanted to keep an entrance off of Grey Road 7 to their church, and they have always kept the access plowed for us during Sundays when we need to get into the church. So when the Blue Water District School acquired the property, they initially informed us that this entrance was going to be converted into a one-way, 2-lane entrance, and that our entrance to the parking lot, which is not the circular entrance, but the entrance beyond that, would be closed off. We would have to access the parking lot through our circular entrance, but we would have to exit the church property through the school board property because of the one-way traffic coming in. These plans changed when we informed the contractor and the board that we had a legal right-of-way on this entrance. During the reconstruction of the roadway, we were surprised to discover that the water supply to the church goes under this entrance. This was discovered when the contractor cut the line, and people using the church informed our office administrator that there was no water. When she went out to check, she found out that the line had been cut. The line was repaired, and repaired a second time when they broke it again. No real further thought was given to this situation until September of 2020, when the contractor came and told us that with the reconstruction of the road, the lowering of its level, and the constant traffic of buses and cars, there was a very real possibility that the water line could freeze in the winter. This took us completely by surprise. We were told that an investigation had shown the water service to the church appeared to take the path shown on this next slide. And you can see the dotted blue line there where it originates from in front of the property there on the corner, which is Murray Adams' property. It originates right beside his shutoff, goes along the front and then down the side, crosses over the entranceway, and then comes into our church along the west side of the church. Our immediate response when we were told that the water line could possibly freeze was, why are you telling us that now, after the work has been done and the road has been paved? We questioned why, at the very least, the line was not covered with insulation. Their response was that it was an improper service connection to the church, and it was the town's responsibility to provide a proper service. They sloughed off all responsibility and placed it on the town, and they informed us that they had brought this to the town's attention several times with no real response. So the next slide. When we brought our concerns to town officials, we were told that nothing could be done until 2023. And in a letter dated June 30th to Doris Haw, our board chairperson, from Rob Armstrong, he states, next slide, the municipality is planning to complete water main replacement design in 2022 and construction in 2023 in conjunction with the County of Grey's improvements on Grey Road 7 from Syke Street to Muir Street. This is conditional upon council approval of the project at budget time. We have no idea why the service was put in this way. The key members of our building committee at the time, John McDonald and Don Bumstead, have long since passed away. Whether it had something to do with the municipality of St. Vincent and the municipality of Meaford and where their border lines were, I'm not sure. But all we know is that we are now in the precarious position of possibly having our water service interrupted. And without water, we would have to close, and that is not acceptable to us. In Mr. Armstrong's letter, he states that we were provided with information by environmental services staff early in the process on how the service could be protected from freezing, including using insulation. We were not. No mention of insulation was made to us until we brought it up to the contractor after the September 20th information that we got from them. And I'm left to wonder, and we're left to wonder, if this was something that came up when the board discussed the issue with the town or with the officials of the town, and that was a suggestion, but we don't know. It was never brought to our attention. We were never part of those discussions. Mr. Armstrong goes on to state that we could arrange with the town to have the proper connection put in earlier, but it would be at our cost, which would be a minimum of $7,500. So now we're paying to resolve a problem that is improper water service, which is supposedly the town's responsibility, and we're not in a position to be able to do that. In a phone discussion I had with Chris Collier, he said something to the effect of, the winters are milder now, the service is not frozen in the past, so it might not be a problem. Well, that's a very little comfort. And while we are a church, we cannot operate on a hope and a prayer alone. While 2023 appears to offer the proper resolution to this concern, even it is not guaranteed, as it is conditional upon council approval. But our issue now is, how do we get through to that date? Knox started this process with the intent of being cooperative and a good neighbor to the school. It is our opinion now that our cooperation has been taken advantage of, from contractors and sub-trades using our parking lot, to large trucks using it as a turnaround location, to poor communications from the contractor, the board, and the municipality. We are left with a sour taste in our mouth. To be fair, the Blue Water District School Board has responded to our concerns when they were raised, but not always in a manner that was satisfactory to us. And throughout this entire process, it has become very clear to us that no one is willing to take responsibility, and the finger is always pointed in another direction. The contractor says the water service is improperly installed, it's the town's problem. Mr. Armstrong says we may need to consult legal counsel, as this is a private matter between the parties. We are stuck in the middle. All we know is that according to the board and the contractor, we have an improper water service that was brought to the attention of the town earlier in the building process, and we have now been hung out to dry, literally, should our water service freeze. So here's our question to council. The next slide. What will the town do to guarantee that we have water? And heaven forbid that the line breaks under the new entranceway. What happens then? Who pays for that resolution? Will the school have to be closed because the entrance is blocked? Legal counsel may have to yet get involved. Thank you.
Thank you, and we appreciate your concern. It's obviously of great concern to your members as well. Questions from council? I don't see any, and I just know that you have been working with our CAO and with the school board as well to come to a realization of this problem.
We are stuck at a dead end right now. I would suggest that perhaps we need to have a sit-down meeting with some of the members of either council or the municipality to actually
Okay,
face-to-face.
and that will be undertaken by our CAO. So thank you very much for bringing this to our attention today.
Thank you.
And thank you to your members who've joined you for some moral support. Our second presentation this afternoon is Gladys Williams from the Lawn Bowling Club. Welcome, Gladys.
Thank you, Barb. And Henry, if you get stuck, you can always bring your church to lawn bowling. I'm here just to tell you just to report actually on the community bursary that our club has received for the last 2 years. And we're very grateful for that, by the way. Due to COVID-19, we made the decision, after advice from our provincial body, not to open in 2020. Our greatest asset is our greens, and even though the season was canceled, we still needed to maintain our greens. Our greens expense was $1,844, and I've got it broken down if anybody needs that information. We had expenses and minimal revenue, so financially, we suffered. The community bursary we received was applied to our greens expenses. When 2021 arrived, we were not certain whether we would have a season. Finally, in early July, we were given the green light to open with restrictions. Major expenses for us have been greens, again, $1,816, property taxes on property that you own, and insurance. We did manage to have 25 members join, which helped to provide revenue. We have been very grateful to receive the community bursary, which has helped us offset our expenses, and we hope it continues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions from council? Gladys, if I may, I'm just really curious about a youth program, if that is something that you folks would entertain, would consider, if you've had any young people, come in to try lawn bowling.
We would absolutely consider it. We would have an expense of buying bowls that would fit their hands.
Right.
And I don't know where that money will come from right now. I mean, we're looking at applying for more grants from the provincial government, but I don't know if that will happen. Mm-hmm. Rob and I have actually been talking about that with the whole facility down there, because there's other
Excellent.
assets as well.
Sure.
And we've actually invited council down to Lawn Bowl, but there were no takers. Can't understand that.
Well, I think, through our community health and wellness plan, I think one of the focus of that is looking at opportunities for youth and seniors, and certainly these assets should be explored in that vein. So we'll carry on that conversation.
We have taken care of the seniors.
Yes, you have indeed. Thanks for your presentation. We have no deputations or public questions registered at this time. So we will move on to council inquiries. Anything from council? And Councillor Kentner?
Thank you. Through your worship, I have a question for our CAO, Mr. Armstrong. Rob, there's widespread belief that new buildings in urban Meaford are not to exceed 3 stories. Is that fact, myth, or fiction?
To your worship, so It comes down to as of right permission. So in accordance with our policies and bylaws which dictate height of buildings, as of right, actually for most, it's 3 stories. Our official plan, though, does speak to other opportunities to go up to 5, subject to certain conditions. We're aware that those policies on how you get up to 5 with certain conditions need some work and will be part of the official plan review consideration. But that's how it's right. To say that it's an outright, no, you can't go above 3 is incorrect. That our plan, in fact, under our current policies and provisions, Council did allow a 5-story building downtown. It hasn't been built yet, but did pass a zoning bylaw to allow it. And if our policies didn't allow it, we wouldn't have been able to do that. So that should be a sign that we do have the ability to go up to 5 under certain conditions.
Councillor Vickers?
Through your worship, if I may, what building? I'm confused by your statement, Rob.
Yeah.
Was it during this council? Was it a previous council?
No,
or?
it was a previous council. So it's the Lino Tonsick building, which is the proposed building in the location of the Refillery, McGinty's, the store that used to be
Krusty's, it used to be Krusty's.
Krusty's, yes, and all the way over and including the wool shop. So permission, zoning bylaw was granted to allow that to go up to 5. There's a lot of studies, a lot of work that needs to be done. It's not just an outright permission, but the zoning bylaw was passed by the previous council, actually probably 2 councils ago to allow
2
it.
councils ago.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that was up to, the facade was up to 4 stories, and the 5th story was a step back
Step back, total 5,
from
but
that,
step
total
back.
5 at the back side. Yeah. And
Just-
Councillor
If
Kentner?
I could ask, because it's my understanding that it would also be 5 stories opposite Meaford Hall here on Nelson Street. Is that correct?
Through your worship, no, the only permission that was granted there under the current approvals was a 3-story building. We've had somebody that consulted with the Heritage Committee to go up to 5, but he would have to amend the zoning bylaw. So that permission has not been given at that one.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship, and a question as well for Mr. Armstrong. Rob, some time ago now, I think before COVID, and we talked at council about having some regular updates on development projects, and I just wondered if it was possible to have those occasionally, just so that council is in the loop, so to speak, on where we are with the many projects that we have on the go.
Yes, through your worship. So we were doing memos to council on the status of development projects on a regular basis. We'll be very happy when our new director of planning starts on Monday, next Monday, and that will be one of the things. Actually, we'll have to do it for him to bring him up to speed on some of the projects. So we will bring another memo to council to bring it, keep it coming regularly. So.
Thank you.
Anything further from council? I see no further questions. So with that, we will move on to item 7 on our agenda, 7-point motions and bylaws for decision, and 7.1 is our consent agenda. We have 4 items that we have seen before at Committee of the Whole on this consent agenda, and they would be A, COM 2021-16, the ITFD Partnership Dissolution Update. And the recommendation was that council expresses its support for the current ownership structure and of the Intertownship Fire Department partnership, and direct staff to bring forward an updated ownership agreement as soon as possible. B is COR 2021-47, a short-term space needs and administrative building options, and the recommendation is that council authorize the expenditure of $257,500 to renovate and equip 15 Trowbridge Street West. And point 2 on that recommendation is to defer the previously directed sale of 15 Trowbridge Street until such time as a long-term plan for administrative space has been approved by council. And point 3 is to direct staff to bring forward options for long-term administrative space following the conclusion of the facility needs study in the spring of 2022. C is bylaw 2021-68, and this is the one that Deputy Mayor will be excused from, regarding the Meaford Golf Course Phase 2 development. The recommendation is that this bylaw authorize the execution of a development agreement regarding Phase 2 of the Meaford Golf Course development, and to amend the zoning bylaw number 60-2009 of the municipality, and that be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. And the last one is COM 2021-15, the Economic Development Advisory Committee, and that the recommendation is that council waive the provisions of the appointment policy requiring recruitment of members for committee vacancies in September 2021. Are there any items on that list that anyone wishes to pull? Councillor Vickers?
B.
B? Thank you. Anything else?
And you will, of course, Madam Mayor, have to pull item C so that the Deputy Mayor can leave for that one.
That is pulled, yeah. Thank you for that. So may I have a mover and a seconder then to put A, B, and D on the consent agenda?
I asked you to pull B.
Pardon me?
I asked you to pull B.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I thought you said C.
Oh,
My
no.
my fault, sorry. B and C. And my apologies to you, Mr. Clerk, obviously I misheard. Okay, so A and D then on the consent agenda. Mover and a seconder, Councillor Bell and Councillor Greenfield, thank you. All in favor of, and that is carried. A and D. Okay, moving back then to COR 2021-47, the short-term space needs and administrative building options. Your mover and Councillor Vickers will move that. Can I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor, thank you. Okay, did you wish to speak to this?
Yep, thank you, Your Worship.
Yeah.
I'd like to bring this back forward just to have a second look at it and just to try and explain maybe where I look at it, is that I still feel that if we aren't, that if we put this money to the short-term needs, that money would be better spent on more of a future longer-term goal. And I would just like to urge council to reconsider, and that they would consider using the money what I feel would be in a better way of not allowing it to be used in a short-term solution than would be, in my feelings, wasted. I just feel that we aren't taking a long look, like a long-term vision of it. We have taken a very long look at it, and I think we should just reconsider and take a vision on what the best outcome would be for the municipality.
Okay, thank you for that. Deputy Mayor, did you want to comment on that?
Thank you, Your Worship. I will just ask Mr. Armstrong, if I may. I understand that some work is underway in the office, and I wonder if you could share with us how that work is going, if it's sort of on schedule, on budget. Is there just any update on how the current work is coming along?
So through Your Worship, the work that's ongoing is a roof repair. So there's not significant, although it's a big project, it's not of really, it's one of those things that have to be done, otherwise there'd be a real problem in the short term. It was delayed for a couple of weeks because due to COVID, the contractor ran out of product. I think they're going to be back in the next week or so, as far as I understand, to finish up that roofing project. We did discover some related effects to that work, in that our venting system, HVAC system, wasn't functioning, is in really bad shape, and a lot of the fumes that were related to that work came into the building, and we had a number of problems with staff feeling the effects of that. It was a real strong glue smell that came down into the building, and it took us quite a few days to get it to a point where people could still work on it. We had to close for 2 days and move into this building. I'm hoping that when they come back to finish that we don't have that, but it's just highlighting a lot of the problems that we're having with that existing building. I think it's key to council.
Councillor Kentner?
Thank you. Through your worship, but just, Paul, could you tell us sort of how you would see moving forward, like toward a longer-term goal? Like, are you thinking of a new build? Are you thinking of the old Amrock office? Do you have any plan, or would it just be a matter of moving people into temporary quarters and just take a little more time to sort it out?
No, I think there has been some solutions suggested by staff on moving to the Amrock building, and I can see really a future in the Amrock, somewhere else besides putting money into the library and into a building that I didn't realize that this was even going on. I feel that we're just throwing good money after bad, and I prefer to see us, instead of trying to patchwork it up to get us through a few more years down the road, that we go to a different spot, and whether the Amrock building's the proper one or another building, I guess I'm not completely sure. I feel that's kind of a staff issue. That's the business of staff to bring back to council what would be a proper building that could be used as a municipal office. I'm not looking for a Taj Mahal. I'm not looking for a building like what I would say even the town of Blue Mountains has. I just want something that's affordable but workable. The last meeting I made the comment about having to go into the municipal office and having to stand outside because there's there's 3 other people in the lobby. Obviously, it's a very small lobby, and it was fine. I didn't mind standing there. I just that's what you got to do. You got to do. Thank goodness it was in the summertime. If it's -10 out, I'm not too sure I'd be so happy about having to stand outside. So I feel that we're just looking at it very short-term and dollar-oriented, that we don't want to spend the money now, that we're almost just kind of punting the problem off into the future. And, like I said, I just wish, I'm afraid that we're spending good money and basically, I want to say throw it out the window, but you understand that if we spend this money, we won't be able to recoup it, and in 5 years down the road, we'll have to build something or move to another office facility, and that money will just be kind of wasted. I'd rather take this $250,000 and put it in the bank if we can. I guess we have to keep our office open, but put it in the bank if we can, and look for a longer-term solution as opposed to just stopgapping.
Thanks for that, Councillor Vickers. I have Councillor Bartley, Councillor Bell, and then Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and all due respect, Councillor Vickers, it is up to council to make that decision. Staff has brought forward tons and tons of reports on where we can go. They've brought us 5 different places we can go. Though I agree with you, I don't want to spend the money on the building we've got. It's the least issue we have, because if we made the decision today to do the Amrock building or do a new build, it will be several years before that happens, and we need the work done now. It has been given to us by staff that we need it now, and I believe the money that we put towards these buildings will be recouped if we do move on and sell them. I think it's the worst of all the evils that's in front of us. But unless you're prepared to pass one of the other programs tonight, or today, I think we have to go ahead with what's on the table. All due respect, thank you.
Councillor Bartley, thank you. Councillor Bell?
Well, thanks, Madam Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Vickers, for bringing something back to the table here for discussion. It's good to do that. Basically, when I was listening to yourself, Councillor Vickers, you were really truly stating the issue at hand, that there's short-term and there is long-term. And I think that when our staff have told us that the working conditions and how cramped they are, not enough floor space, they are looking for an immediate relief to how they can make things better. And so I can support this small amount, like $250,000 type of thing, to help them do a better living space and a better working environment short term. And it also speaks clearly to the future. And that is something that will be very similar to what we went through with the library when it was a space needs analysis. And it took, as Councillor Bartley said, it did take several years for that to come to an absolute clear and definitive decision. So on the motion that's before myself today, I can vote in favor of this. But again, I do appreciate you bringing a subject matter for more conversation at council. That's deeply appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Bell and Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks to Councillor Vickers for bringing this forward. This is what we need around this table is more further discussion. I will support the recommendation. Granted, it is a $250,000 investment, which is sizable, but I have a feeling that this will not be only a short-term solution. I think there's great potential there for the former library building to fit in to our administration, to our municipal operation. I really think it can work along with the current admin building. That will come out in the future, but it's a great old building. I think putting a $250,000 investment in it will provide relief for our staff for a number of years, and heaven knows if real estate keeps climbing like it has the last 2 or 3 years, and I'm not saying it will, but if it does, the extra $250,000 in that building will be recouped over and over again when we do finally decide, if we do finally decide, to put it up for sale. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greenfield. Thanks very much for bringing this forward, Councillor Vickers. I certainly sympathize with the spending of money of that magnitude on a short-term basis when we are faced imminently with a larger decisions. I think for me the key is in the facility needs study, which is scheduled to be completed in the spring of 2022. That will give us perhaps a little better understanding of what our needs are and what where we should go from at that point. In the meantime, we do have health and safety concerns for our staff, and we do have to make the administrative area comfortable for our residents as well as our staff and in a workable situation. So thank you again for bringing it up, and you wish to speak again? Please go ahead.
It's not my wishes, Your Worship, that I feel that we shouldn't invest in a safe operation for our staff. It's just, I feel that this will end up becoming the long-term goal. Like we say that it's a short term and that this is where it's going to stop, and we will find something later on. And I'm just afraid that this will just delay it, and that the short-term gain will become the long-term gain after a period of time.
Point well taken. Thank you. Thank you for that. Is there any further comments, questions? Then I will call the question on receiving this recommendation and moving this forward to council. All in favor? And those against? And Councillor Vickers against, and that is carried. Good discussion, everyone. Thank you. And Deputy Mayor will excuse herself as this is brought forward. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put this item on the table? Councillor Greenfield, Councillor Bartley. Okay. Any discussion on this item at this point? This was pulled because of a conflict. Seeing none, I will call a question. All in favor of this motion going forward, and that is carried. go very far.
Ross, can you get Shirley?
I think she's
Thank
probably
you.
just around the corner.
There
she
she
is. Okay. All right, moving on then to 7.2 items for consideration. The first one is COR 2021-48 is the provision of audit services. And the recommendation reads that Council of the Municipality of Meaford approves the single source award for the provision of audit services for the year ended December 31st, 2021 to BDO Canada LLP for $48,692.16, including the municipality's non-refundable allocation of HST. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Vickers and Councillor Bartley. Comments, questions for staff on this? Fairly straightforward. Councillor Bell?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I can support this this afternoon as with my tenure here on council. I've always found that BDO always does a very thorough job and usually makes it quite clear. And so the amount of money that they're asking for, in my mind, is reasonable for the work that's required. So I can feel very comfortable awarding this contract single source to BDO.
Thank you for that. And Councillor Greenfield and then Councillor Bartley.
Yes, thanks, Your Worship. I agree with Councillor Bell. I think the continuation of BDO for at least one more year. I understand from our CAO that the price quoted is practically the same as for the previous year, and for the reasons put forward in the report that do support this continuation, I think it's a good idea to approve this recommendation.
Thank you for that. Anything further? Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I too agree we can accept this for this year. I have some issues with, and I always had issues with the price they charge for Wagner and Riverside. It couldn't be a couple hours of auditing to do that, and they want $3,300 for it. I've always had issues with that. Maybe I can get them to explain that to me and further down the road. But having said that, just assurances that after this year, this will go out to tender again.
Yes, through the worship, it was our intent to actually get it out for this time. However, due to the constraints mentioned in the report, we do fully intend to tender it well in advance of next year's audit, for sure.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, seeing no further comments, I will call the question. All in favor of moving this forward, and that is carried. Thank you. B is the Integrity Commissioner Annual Report. The recommendation reads that the Council of the Municipality of Meaford receive the Integrity Commissioner Annual Report 2021 for information purposes. I have a mover and a seconder to put that on the table, please. Deputy Mayor, thank you. And Councillor Greenfield.
Your
Any
Worship.
comments of,
Matt, I think.
sorry, Matt.
No, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to let Council know that for both, and I'm going to look behind me as I say this for the thumbs up. Yeah, I've got one. For both this item and the next one, our Integrity Commissioners Jeff Abrams and Janice Atwood-Petowski are on the phone, so they will be able to talk to you should you have any questions about the items.
Thank you for that, Matt. I did have that down on my notes, but not only is my hearing at fault today, but my seeing is sight is as well. Apologies for that. Any questions? Any further questions, comments? Councillor Vickers?
Thank you, Your Worship, and I feel you're being awfully hard on yourself with your your couple errors. If the gentleman is on the call, can he? I'm assuming he can hear me.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Yes, it's Janice speaking, and Jeff is on the call as well. Sorry, it's we don't see you, but in any case, we can hear you.
Okay.
We had wanted to make some brief comments just with respect to the annual report, and then some brief comments with respect to the recommendation report. But certainly, if you have specific questions, unless. Would you like me to make some brief comments? Because that would be our normal practice, to just provide some high-level comments.
Janice, hi, it's Mayor Klumpus, and yes, thank you. We would appreciate your brief comments.
Oh, right, very well, and I I won't belabor, so let me start with the annual report. So this is our second annual report to you, and we use the word annual it's a little bit euphemistically because we cover about a year and a half in this report. It's really this report really covers the period since the beginning of the pandemic. We had come and provided training to you right at the very beginning of our appointments. I'm going to circle back to that at the end by mentioning that we will be providing training in the very near future. But the role of the Integrity Commissioner, just for the public's understanding, is a very broad role under the legislation. It's an independent statutory role to advise on ethical policy development, to provide education and training on matters relating to ethical behavior, so codes of conduct, conflict of interest, etc., to provide advice upon a request of a member of council or a member of local board. And that's really the opportunity for members to reach out to us for independent, binding, and confidential advice that they can then rely on with respect to dealing with matters that may be falling in the gray area with respect to, for example, conflict of interest or code issues. The residual role of an Integrity Commissioner is to provide a mechanism for complaints to be received and reviewed where there's an allegation that a member of council or a member of local board has really breached their ethical responsibilities, breached the code of conduct or other ethical provisions or conflict of interest. And in that case, the Integrity Commissioner can then determine whether a matter is capable of resolution or ought to be a matter of a public report to council. And so that's really the broadly speaking, the role of Integrity Commissioner. And so the annual report sort of sets that out in the first 2 or 3 pages, really as much for the public's edification as to remind council of our role. And in the area that we provide services, we sort of put that into 3 buckets. One is education and training and policy development. In that area, we've really done very little because it's been a pandemic and we really have sort of taken a step away. We prefer to do as much as possible that kind of work in person, and it just hasn't been possible during the pandemic to do very much of that. In terms of advice, as members of council appreciate, when they have specific issues they need guidance on, they can reach out to us individually for confidential binding advice. And during the period covered by this report, we have responded to 6 such requests for advice. For the most part, although advice is confidential, we could say that many of those have dealt with issues relating to conflict of interest or avoiding conflicts of interest. And we think for the most part, the advice has been well understood and well received. So the final bucket is really complaint, investigation, and resolution. And when we have a complaint, we certainly go through a triage process to determine whether it's within our jurisdiction and whether it is in the public interest that it be investigated, and if it's capable of resolution. And so in the period covered by this report, we received 8 complaints filed with us. 5 of those complaints received were arising out of a controversial development proposal which asserted that the mayor had information that she failed to share. And we determined that there really was no contravention, that there was nothing on the facts which supported or substantiated that allegation. And so as we do when we dispose of a complaint without proceeding to a full investigation or following an investigation, we determined there is no there. We provided a fulsome explanation back to each of the complainants, as well as providing a copy of that to the member, in this case the mayor, about whom the complaint was asserted, explaining exactly how we arrived at our determination that there was no contravention. There was nothing on the facts that supported that, and so that's outlined in the report. And that disposition is provided to the complainants and the respondent so that it's understood how we arrived at that conclusion. And in the event, should somebody wish to take it further, there's a starting point. We also had 2 complaints arising out of comments made by a member in public, and those are the subject of the recommendation report, so I won't really speak to those just yet. I'll speak to those in a few minutes. But generally, I would say we find that the way that the framework of the Integrity Commissioner and the role of the Integrity Commissioner is working quite well in Meaford, as it should be. We find that members of council understand that they can utilize the Integrity Commissioner as a resource for individual confidential advice with respect to ethical matters and avoid any pitfalls. And as well, we find that the matters that have come before us in terms of complaints are matters which this has provided an appropriate outlet for people to have some determination which resolves the matter. One of the things we're able to do, because we serve as Integrity Commissioner for over 40 municipalities, is we have a bit of a vantage point as to the issues around the province. And so just we provide a little bit of information just so that council can understand what those issues are around the province. So very briefly, I'll touch on those. An area that arises quite frequently in many municipalities, and not necessarily in Meaford at all, but is an area of where council members or members of local boards will run into difficulty because of disparaging comments or disrespectful comments. And sometimes these are matters where, well, they're never appropriate, and regardless of what communication medium is used, whether it's spoken word or print or social media, it's inappropriate to be disparaging of others, no matter where that is done. So we have seen a bit of that in other municipalities in social media as well, and we simply caution members of council to treat each other respectfully and treat members of the public respectfully. Even in disagreeing, it's possible to disagree even passionately, but maintaining a respectful tone. Conflicts of interest, of course, we've touched on that briefly. Members, it's important that members recognize when they may have a conflict of interest and take appropriate steps to recuse themselves, to declare their interest and the nature of their interest and step away. And so, and as was observed even in your meeting earlier, the member certainly recognized an interest and stepped away, and we certainly applaud that. We note in our annual report the takeaways from the Collingwood inquiry that deal with members, the importance of members understanding that their exposure to conflicts of interest is not limited to the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, that statute is a fairly narrow statute, and in fact and in law, members of council and members of local board have a broader exposure to common law conflicts of interest. And so that was certainly noted in the Collingwood inquiry. It was an expensive lesson to be learned for sure, but certainly it was highlighted in that particular inquiry. We note that one issue that arises from time to time is members having difficulty staying in their lane, and that's really a basic understanding that members of council are an elected body to establish policy, but they are not expected to, nor should they jump in and try to do the work themselves. And has not been an issue in Meaford, but it is an issue from time to time in other municipalities, and it's simply a matter to be noted, that there is a separation, if you will, between the role of council and the role of administrative staff. And there's a handoff that has to occur, and it's important to respect that handoff. Social media and blocking is an issue that has arisen around Ontario in different municipalities and beyond Ontario as well in other municipalities across the country. The idea of members who may be engaging in social media, which has, I think, become ubiquitous really, particularly during the pandemic, and that social media page or account may take on aspects of being a town square or public forum. And in those cases where really what is going on is a bit of a public discussion of issues or a public dissemination of information by the council member, the elected official out to the constituency, it's inappropriate for the elected official to block people arbitrarily without indicating to them what there are certainly expectations that the member, if they are engaging in that type of social media, have to be cautious and be sure to curate their site so that there isn't really offensive comments taking place. But at the same time, they can't simply arbitrarily block people who happen to disagree with their particular perspective. That's simply something we reflect in our annual report as a sort of a commonly understood position around the province at this point, or certainly commonly held view of many integrity commissioners. During the course of this spring and summer, the province embarked on a consultation really in response to quite an egregious set of circumstances out of another municipality, actually Ottawa. And that consultation is now concluded. We don't know what the results are going to be, but as a result, Principals Integrity, Jeff and I, led the preparation of a submission by the Municipal Integrity Commissioners of Ontario. Jeff and I, acting as Principals Integrity, are quite involved in MECO, and we spoke to a variety of suggested amendments. That's what the province was looking for, suggestions on where and how to strengthen, presumably, the role of integrity commissioners. Our perspective back to the province from MECO largely spelled out that integrity commissioners in Ontario are largely satisfied that we don't need to have more or additional powers bestowed upon us under legislation. We think that the powers that exist are well thought out, and so generally we support the system in the way it works. So those are the comments that we have with respect to the annual report, and subject to any questions, I'm happy to move on to the recommendation report. I can't see any, no visual cues here.
No visual cues. Thank you very much, Janice. And we do have a question from Councillor Vickers and one coming from the Deputy Mayor as well. Paul?
Yep. Thank you, Your Worship. And Janice, again, is Councillor Vickers speaking. Reading the report, I had, and you covered this in your report to us right now about staying in your lane and social media. I was wondering, when I was reading it, it kind of made it sound like there was complaints about somebody from the municipality. So I guess your form must be somewhat of a generic letter that must get sent to each municipality. Would it be?
Yes. Thank you for that question. Yes, the portions of this that outline the role of the Integrity Commissioner and the portions that outline ethical themes around the province are generic, although we try to update it and revise it, depending on changing circumstances. But the comment on social media There really has been no specific complaint out of the municipality of Meaford. There certainly have been complaints out of other municipalities who we serve as Integrity Commissioner, as well as in the course of looking at those, we took the opportunity to look at complaints arising in other jurisdictions as well. Elsewhere in Ontario, there have been Integrity Commissioners who've dealt with this. There's a number of policies now circulating with some of the larger municipalities whose Integrity Commissioners issue bulletins, for example, to their municipality. I mean, there's a couple of municipalities that have full-time permanent Integrity Commissioners, and they have touched on some of this. So we tried to pull that together for our client municipalities, just to have a little sort of a heads up. These are issues that arise. They haven't arisen at all in Meaford with respect to social media and blocking, but they have arisen elsewhere. Is that helpful?
Okay.
Yes, that is helpful. Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
And over to you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And Jeff and Janice, thank you for being with us today and for all the support that you have provided to our municipal staff and council. I have two questions, and the first one may involve Mr. Smith. And you've been touching on it, social media, and the suggestion in the report of a social media policy. Is that advisable? Is it something that perhaps we should have a motion on at some point, Mr. Smith, or is it something that will be covered in our education session sufficiently?
So we actually do have a social media policy already. It's perhaps something that we need to include in some refresher trainings. I think that was adopted in the last term of council. So that does exist. And off the top of my head, I can't remember quite how detailed that gets into for council, because it certainly talks a lot about what staff should and shouldn't do there, but I think it does reference council as well.
So we could have a refresher on that, Mr. Smith?
Yep.
Thank you. And my second question, Jeff and Janice, it's something that we've talked about at the county council table, and I just wondered if I could ask your thoughts. The terms conflict of interest and interest, are they interchangeable, or is there a differentiation in the meaning of expressing one or the other?
So that is such a lovely question, because it really it's an issue of it's partly an issue of semantics. So the answer is that it's necessary to avoid a conflict of interest, and so a lot of what we put in our code and the commentary of the code for council is ensuring that members can recognize where they might have a conflict of interest if they don't do something like declare and step away. So it's managing to avoid a conflict of interest, but really it's about having an interest. And so Jeff and I often use different terminology around this because quite correctly, it's about recognizing an interest and recognizing if that interest is a disqualifying interest. We put a lot of this language into our code because it's more helpful to speak of disqualifying interests and non-disqualifying interests than simply an interest. Long and short, if members have an interest in a matter, it may be a disqualifying interest that would give rise to a conflict if they stay and participate. If they step away, they don't have a conflict of interest. So often members will say, I want to declare a conflict of interest. They're actually declaring an interest to avoid a conflict. Does that make sense? It's a bit semantic.
No, that is very helpful, Janice. Thank you.
That really was a very clear explanation. I think I got it.
Good.
Councillor Bell.
Excellent.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Jeff and Janice, for joining us this afternoon. When I read through your yearly report, I did personally focus in on the page around 114, where it was the ethical themes from around the province, and it's one of those subject matters that my fellow councillors have already talked a little bit about with the conflict of interest, and it's not just based on family law, it's becoming much broader than that. And it seems that more and more There's going to be legislated conduct for council members in the province. And likely it's going to all truly be based on case law, which transpires from time to time. And therefore, what I'm concluding this afternoon is that any member of council is actually going to be required to have a very high level of training. And I know that the next item on the agenda speaks to training, and I am personally very confident, Jeff and Janice, that Principles Integrity is very much in an excellent position to help this particular council achieve a higher standard and a higher level of understanding. So thank you for your report.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Anything further from council? I'm seeing no hands raised, Janice and Jeff, and I want to take this opportunity as well to thank you very much for your support and your professionalism as we've all navigated this very sometimes shark-infested waters. And with that, I do have one more question for you from Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I didn't know we were excusing Jeff and Janice now. I thought we're going into B part. Are they?
Well, we will. We're
And they're
just
staying for
excusing
that?
From the report perspective.
Okay, I thought you were excusing them for the day. Thank you.
There's no hook on this one that exits stage right, so we're good for another agenda item. Matt, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I was just going to say if we're ready, we just need to vote on this before Janice moves on to the next one.
Of course we will. Is there anything further on this one, on the report, the annual report? Seeing nothing further, I will call the question. All in favor of accepting this for information purposes, and that is carried. Again, thank you, Janice, for your comments.
Thank you very much.
And now we move on to B, 7.2B, and that is the Integrity Commissioner recommendation report regarding code complaint. And the recommendation reads that the Council of the Municipality of Meaford, 1, request that Principles Integrity conduct an in-person education and training session for members of Council and senior staff, tentatively scheduled for November the 8th, 2021. Number 2, request that the education and training session topics include an overview of the good conduct provisions set out in the Code of Conduct, and B, the roles and responsibilities of councillors and staff, respectively. And C is a discussion of good governance practices relating to the exercise of councillors' roles and responsibilities. And D is guidance for dealing with sensitive topics, such as mental health in the workplace. And point 3, to receive this report for information and direct that it be posted on the Municipality of Meaford website for public access. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table? Councillor Bartley. Councillor Greenfield, thank you. Discussion at this point. Questions? Councillor.
I wonder, Madam Mayor, if you just want to pass this over to Janice. I think she's probably got some comments before Council starts discussing.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Janice.
Yes, and again, I won't take you tooth and nail through this report. You have it in front of you. I would say this, and we set this out right in the executive summary, that the report makes findings that the code of conduct was breached by Councillor Bell, but that at the same time reflects the councillor's acknowledgement that a most effective course correction can be achieved through the attendance by he and his colleagues on council, along with the municipality's senior staff at an education and training session focused on good governance, and that has tentatively been scheduled for November 8th. Certainly the councillor's acknowledgement, prompted acknowledgement in the course of this investigation permitted us to shorten this report and to focus really on how more positive outcomes can be achieved. I'm not sure that we need to go tooth and nail through the balance of the report. It's not a very lengthy report. There were complaints with respect to disparaging comments. We found that the allegations were substantiated, but that the councillor's comments were not a reflection of malice, but rather a reflection of a lack of really an opportunity to have some good guidance and training on the roles and responsibilities of counselors and staff, and some appreciation of good governance and an empathetic approach to dealing with mental health and stresses in the workplace. And it indeed has been a very stressful time for municipalities, as it has for everyone through this period. So it's really just an opportunity to try to build forward, build better forward. I sound political by saying that, but however, that is the intention. And we're certainly available to answer questions on this report should you find it necessary, but otherwise we certainly just embrace the opportunity of working with council on November 8th.
Thank you for that, Janice. Is there any, Councillor Greenfield and then Councillor Bartley?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a question firstly to Mr. Smith. Matt, since this is to be this session on November 8th I'm referring to, is to be an education and training session, I'm assuming then that is a closed session for
Yes,
council?
it will be.
It is, okay, thanks. I just wanted to get that confirmed. The reason I ask that is that I do have some questions and concerns about the report, and I'm wondering, I'm quite okay with accepting number 1 and the recommendation, and 2, A, B, C, and D, but personally, I would like to have my questions, and I expect other questions from other council members, delivered and answered before we go ahead with number 3. So I guess what I'd like to do is either vote on number 1 and 2 separately, or else defer number 3 until after the November 8th meeting.
Through you, Madam Mayor, and Janice will correct me if I'm wrong here. I believe that posting this is a requirement of having the Integrity Commissioner. That's part of the point of the government forcing us to appoint an Integrity Commissioner, is that their reports are then public, as they are on the agenda, and posted for the public to see afterwards. So I don't think, Janice, that's something that they can say no to.
That's absolutely right, yeah. That is part and parcel of the legislative framework.
I should just add, it's Jeff speaking, that the report is already public and on the website for the purposes of setting out the agenda for today's meeting. In some municipalities, our reports are set out on an Integrity Commissioner page, so there's ongoing easy access. I don't think that's the case in Meaford, but neither is that a requirement on a go-forward basis. The report before you is a public report, and it is already posted publicly as part of this agenda.
Thank you for that. And are you all right? Do you have another question, Councillor Greenfield? Or are you
No,
okay?
not at this time. Thanks,
Not at this
Your
time?
Worship.
Okay.
I should perhaps, Madam Mayor, and again, my colleagues will correct me if needs be, when we talk about a closed session on November the 8th, it's not a closed session to talk about this report. These reports must be discussed in public, and so if council have got questions about the report itself, then now is the time. And November the 8th will be to focus on broader themes.
Thank you for that, Matt. And Councillor Bartley is next, and then Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I was very happy that the complaints against you, Madam Mayor, were dropped because there was nothing to them. That was a no-brainer. Now, just for everybody in the room knows me, but for Jeff and Janice's information, I run a business for 30 years. I've hired or fired 1,500 people, so I know a little bit about sensitivity and training. Like 2 other councillors that day, I went through my career without any leaves from my business, so this was a shocker to us because we've never dealt with anything like this before. And like other councillors, we absolutely 100%, and you must realize this to the staff, that we think we've got the best staff out there, second to none. So there is no question about that from any of these people on this stage. But that day, I do not believe at any time was there any malice coming from Councillor Bell. At any time, it caught us by surprise with what was going on, because there's 3 of us here with businesses that never had this go through their business before. And I do realize mental stress and mental anguish is a real thing, and our hearts go out. Now, I do believe that all Councillor Bell was doing was giving some advice that I give every day, every week, well, every day to my kids. They don't listen, but I give it to them every day, that if you're not comfortable with your job and you're not happy with your job, and 1/3 of your life is in your job, why stay there? Get out and do something that you like. I do believe it was just advice, and at no time was there any malice to degrade any of the staff, because I know everybody on this stage thinks we have the best staff in the county. Thank you.
Councillor Bartley. Councillor Bell.
Well, thank you again, Madam Mayor, and again, thank you to Principals Integrity. So I do want to be very clear on this one, that through the investigation, I can only say that Principals Integrity is an absolutely professional organization. I want you all to know that they did a very complete investigation, and it was done in a very holistic, wholesome manner, that they really did try to encompass all of the important personnel that needed to be consulted with in order to form the content of the report that you all have before you today. But I also want to say this, that I believe that the result of myself, I think that this should be looked upon as something absolutely positive. That we, on this current serving council for more than a year, we're going to benefit. I really and truly believe we're going to benefit from Jeff and Janice, and they can only make us better. And speaking for myself, I absolutely look forward to the opportunity to have open conversation with Principals Integrity, having members of our staff, just going through some clarity items that I know, and it's quite obvious, hey, I struggled. And this is only going to make our municipality better and take us forward in a good, positive manner. So I'm just reaffirming the fact that Principals Integrity are very, very professional, and we've chosen well as a municipality having them as our Integrity Commissioner.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Is there anything further? Councillor Greenfield.
Well, since I'm hearing this is the time to ask questions, I have some questions, if I may, Your Worship.
Go ahead.
Number 37, in our reports on page 6 of the report, says members of council are being perceived as giving greater credence to a single constituent than to the work of staff. I don't agree with that. I wholeheartedly disagree with that statement, and I really take offense that the Integrity Commissioner would make that statement. He certainly didn't hear that from me, and that goes on to number 47. Thanking the members of council and those staff who were asked to participate in our investigation. Members of council, how many members? 2? That would constitute member with an S, but there are 7 members of council. Was I involved? Were we all involved? I want to know that, because I think if we were all involved, similar to comments from Councillor Bartley, we may have had different opinions, different input on what the words that were spoken. I'm not denying Mr. Bell spoke them, I heard them. And I was surprised to hear them. But, I mean, if you're going to do an investigation with members of council, shouldn't that be all 7 of us? Not the few whom you select or were advised to select? So I appreciate your efforts. I know we hired you to do this, but come on. Let's do a thorough job. I expect you're being paid well, and that's good. You deserve it. But let's be a little more complete in the future, and I'm really looking forward to this November 8th meeting because I think there's going to be a lot more questions, a lot more comments. Now, having said that little rant, I do want to explain when I came on municipal council 21 years ago, there were no codes of conduct. Things were pretty wide open. It was Calgary. It was cowboy country. Things have changed, and they've changed for the better. We need codes of conduct. But it has to be a learning experience. It has to take time, and it has to be thorough. If we're going to be under the gun, if we're going to be handcuffed, we might as well have tape over our mouths. The pendulum has swung as it should, but it's swung very, very far. Has it swung too far? I think that's the question that needs to be answered. Okay, I thank you for this opportunity, Your Worship.
Thanks. And I'm going to turn this back to you, Janice and Jeff, for a comment on that in terms of the thoroughness of an investigation. Certainly in the case that I was subjected to, I found it was as thorough as it could possibly be. And I would like your opinion on the thoroughness of the investigation, as I've said, from my perspective and what I've seen of this one as well, that your work is thorough and it needs to be taken at face value. Can you comment on that, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I will comment on that. We certainly pride ourselves on conducting thorough investigations. In this particular case, recalling that the complaints that we received provided the alleged, the allegations of the statements, and we had to certainly determine whether they were substantiated. In terms of the statements with respect to our observations, which is pointed out at really paragraph 36, 37, 38, those are our observations, and we certainly don't hold ourselves out as conducting a complete and comprehensive survey of every member of council. We're solutions oriented in that we want to make sure we have properly substantiated allegations before making findings. On the other hand, we provide you with our independent observations from having spoken to a number of people. Now, as you will note in our report, we do not set out, we don't identify all of the various individuals we did speak with. We don't, in our report, set out a script, he said, she said, a transcript. That's not our approach. We are an independent investigator who gathers the information and provides you with the findings, and we provide you with our observations because we feel that it can be informative for moving forward more positively. So there was no suggestion that we would have spoken to every member of council, and certainly that would there might be circumstances where we had to speak to every member of council. This was not a matter where we felt it was necessary or warranted to speak to every member of council. The respondent acknowledged very promptly the statements. It's important to us to try to help provide positive support for moving forward in as positive a way as possible. We think that there's a learning opportunity from this and from the training and education session to really enlighten so that all members of council and senior staff are understanding where we are as really a society in terms of the kinds of things that it's necessary to be sensitive to. And there may well have been a time when more blunt comments could have passed as all right, maybe 2 or 3 decades ago, but there's a need to reflect on and have some sensitivity towards one's employees. One's employees are not one's children, one's employees are professionals who work for the municipality. So for all of those reasons, we think there's some tremendous opportunity to provide that perspective, and that's what we propose to do. And I appreciate the clerk's comments. Yes, it would be a closed education and training session, and it would be focused on those things that are set out in the recommendation, and that would help to shape more positive interactions going forward.
Thank you for that, Janice. Deputy Mayor?
Your Worship, thank you, and thank you, Janice. So in relation to item number 36 and 37, we've discussed 37, but 36, I'll just read for our listening public. During the course of our investigation, we have been advised that staff perceive some members of council as frequently making disparaging and in some cases slanderous comments about staff in public and at meetings. And of course, the operative word there being perceive, and 37, speaking to trust, seems to be at a low ebb. So obviously, we've got a very serious problem here if staff are coming forward with these types of comments. So I'm very pleased to know that we will have this session. But what I'm going to ask is, will the closed session be what I would term a safe space where all of us, both staff and members of council, can be open and honest with one another, because we've got a long way to go here to improve the situation that we are currently facing. And I'm just hoping that we can all feel comfortable during that session, and that we can air whatever needs to be aired and come out on the other side of the position that we are finding ourselves in at this moment.
Thank you for the question. I'll take a stab at answering it. First of all, the education and training closed session is something sanctioned by the municipal act. The only constraint is that you can't advance the business of council. But we design our education and training sessions as if they were university or college level seminars. In other words, it's not a council meeting per se. Technically it is, but it's not run like a council meeting. It's run like a seminar, and we encourage discussion so that the concepts on the floor can be understood. Is it a safe environment? Absolutely. It is our expectation that members will use the opportunity to test the principles that we are bringing forward by referencing their past and their experience, and to seek out a discussion on whether their perception is shared, what our views are on the ethical aspects of the environment. We'll touch on governance, good governance, because good governance supports proper ethical behavior. And so all of these discussions, we believe, are best conducted in closed session for the very reason that it is a safe environment to bring out everyone's understanding on the issue.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I am seeing no further questions. And with that, then, are we ready to call the question? I will call the question. All in favor of the recommendation going forward as presented? Those in favor, yay. And those against? 2. Sorry, I've 3 against.
I thought that.
Let me call it again. All those in favor of receiving this report moving forward? 1, 2, 3, on that and against? Thank you. That is carried. Thank you very much, Janice and Jeff, for your participation today, and we look forward to November the 7th when we see you in person, we hope.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, at this point, we're just before we move into Committee of the Whole, I would like to suggest we take a 5-minute break. Stretch. Please turn, if we don't do it. Okay. We will reconvene at 2:43. And move into Committee of the Whole. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, for that purpose? Councillor Kentner and the Deputy Mayor, thank you. All in favor of moving into Committee of the Whole, and that is carried. Okay. First off, the mark is the Corporate Services, COR 2021-49, is the McCarroll Park Master Plan. And the recommendation reads that Committee of the Whole recommend to Council of the Municipality of Meaford approve the McCarroll Park design concept as a guiding document in the preparation of future budgets. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Bartley and Councillor Greenfield. And we've had a chance to have a look at the McCarroll Park Master Plan work and the design. Comments, questions of Council? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Really excited about this plan. It's such just a fabulous park, and especially now with all the work that's been done on Bayfield Street. And the report does state that McCarroll is our busiest park, and that the splash pad draws probably the largest crowd of any of our park facilities. And recognizing the cost listed in the report of $324,625 to upgrade the splash pad, my question first of all is that work DC eligible? And is there a way to move up the reconstruction of the splash pad, separating it from the entire recommendations of the new park plan, or do we need to undertake all of that work at the same time?
To Your Worship, so I'll speak to the development charges component. What we're intending is to get our parks plans in front of our consultant to include those projects that they could evaluate and determine to be DC eligible. DC eligible projects are only available to an expanded service. So to replace a like for like does not qualify under development charges. So that would, but if we were adding or making it bigger, then the increase in size is something you could apply development charges to. So that's on the development charges side that I'll explain, and I don't know if Matt wants to add more to the other questions.
Yeah, just with relation to the splash pad and so on, I think that it would be difficult but not impossible to do the splash pad separately from some of the other work, as long as council and the public were willing to accept that the park wouldn't be looking perfect for that period of time. Where the way this plan is laid out, the splash pad would sort of go into the area where the playground equipment is right now, and so, you know, to do the splash pad, that would have to be taken out, and then are we going to reinstall that for a year or two, rather than just buying the new stuff there and then and putting down the new material and so on. So I think that's a conversation we can have. What I will say is that this week we've applied for a Trillium grant for the splash pad reconstruction, which would, if we're successful, be 100% coverage of that particular part of the project, and that includes some of the pathways and so on to get there. So we're going to continue to look for grants for these kind of projects, and McCarroll in particular, and obviously if we can get a large grant for that, then it will help us to find the money to be able to do the other stuff at the same time. Because I think it would certainly be our preference to do it in one fell swoop rather than have multiple years where we're doing work in the same park.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, Matt. We're just looking at this point as a guiding document. Each of the projects, again, would come forward for discussion during the budget process. Councillor Vickers?
Through you, Your Worship, and if I'm missing something, is there any timelines when we're hoping that this work might get done? Like, are you hoping to have it included in the 2022 budget or the 2023?
So if we're successful with the Trillium grant application, we will be bringing it forward for 2022, because the work will have to be done within 12 months of that. So sort of by this sort of time next year. I don't think, and I'm saying this out loud, but I'm not certain that we have a capital project scheduled for next year, but certainly the splash pad is coming to the end of its life. And so we do need to move on that within the next year or two.
So will it be included in this year's budget debate coming up?
I'm not totally sure today, but
Okay.
we can find out what's planning and we'll get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions on this? No, I'm seeing none. I'm really, really pleased to see the surface plan for under the playground. I encountered this type of accessible playground very close to my daughter's home in Oakville and was astounded at how bouncy it is even for adults walking on this playground. Very, very comfortable indeed. So I think that's really a good move. Anything further on this plan? Then I will call the question as recommended, that we adopt this as a guiding document in the preparation of future budgets. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. B is COR 2021-50, options to establish a municipal toboggan hill. And I will read the recommendation that Committee of the Whole recommend that the Council approve the inclusion of the Centre Street Parkland Master Plan as a top priority in the development charges background study, and that we direct staff to include the necessary funds to complete a detailed design and environmental approvals in the 2022 capital budget to allow for construction to start in 2023. And I have a mover for that. Councillor Bell, of course. Thank you. And Councillor Bartley. Questions, comments for staff? Then Deputy Mayor and Councillor Bartley.
Your Worship, thank you. And this is another exciting report, and we look forward to moving forward with this project. My question, Mr. Armstrong or Mr. Smith, whoever wishes to answer, recognizing that we're a couple of years away from being able to construct the new toboggan hill, what can we do for this winter to alleviate some of the parking issues at Beautiful Joe? As we know, kids are going to continue to toboggan there.
So in the parking bylaw that Council passed around 6 months ago now, one of the changes was to introduce no parking along the side of Edwin Street right at the top of Beautiful Joe. So that's a new restriction, which will mean that then we will be able to do some enforcement there, resources permitting, which will help us sort of stop having cars there. Of course, it just signs up on their own. We'll stop some cars parking at the top. I will say, and we've said this a number of times on both sides of the table, you know, we don't encourage tobogganing at Beautiful Joe. We cannot guarantee that it's safe at the top or the bottom. So it's not somewhere that we are going to sort of suggest to people that they go, but we are going to do our best through bylaw work and through sidewalk clearing to at least make it as good as we can.
Thank you.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and probably a wrong time to ask this question because the Parks Director nor the Treasurer is in the room, but it was mentioned at one of the meetings by the former Treasurer that there is enough DC charges in the park program as we speak to pay for Phase 1. Is that correct?
So I actually looked this up this morning because you are actually having the new Parks Director in the room, because that's going to be part of my portfolio as of Monday. So I'm learning fast. I'm just going to, I can't pull up the report right now, but yeah, there is just under $1 million in the Parks Development Charges Reserve right now, or at the end of 2020. And presumably we've got a few development charges this year through various construction projects. So yes, there's about $1 million there. That gets us a decent way through doing this particular part of the budget. But then, of course, that does wipe us out for any other DC-related parks project for some time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Your Worship. And Matt, those are, you're kind of leading right into the way I was thinking. And to the rest of my fellow councillors, I have a lot of concern with this proposal and some questions that I'll get to. Some of my concerns is when you say it out loud that we're going to spend, I think it was around $350,000 on the creation of a new toboggan hill. Now just think about $350,000 to build a hill that we hope the kids will toboggan on. And I struggle with that. I really have no way of defending that. I have no way of supporting that expense. And I just wonder what the residents will look at us and say, are you people understanding the realities of the economic situation that we're in? And that I realize that there is $1 million in the account, but it will be wiped out at the end of that. And that will handcuff us terribly on any other future developments of parks and recreation facilities. One of my questions I have, if I can ask the question, is, so at the former dump, I guess is what we're going to call it, I was told that we can't, because I thought there was a decent hill back there. Anytime I can remember as a young kid going back in there was a hill back there, and I thought it would be used. But I guess we cannot disturb any of the soil that is back there because of the contaminants that it might release up into the environment. So all this material is going to be hauled in. I tried to, I read through the report. I tried to, decipher through the facts and the figures about how many, metric tons of filler is going to come in and at what slope it's going to be in the runoff and sort of thing. And I guess my fear is that if we don't build it as whether you want to say it as good or equal to Beautiful Joe, people aren't going to walk all the way out to Center Street walking past Beautiful Joe. So my next fear is that we're going to spend this $300,000 on this hill that nobody will ever use, or very few. I guess I should say never. That's a very strong statement. That very few people will use, and these other hills, the non-official toboggan hills, whether it's at the fairgrounds or at Beautiful Joe, will continue to be used. And I'm looking at this, unless we do some massive deconstruction of these hills, I don't think we'll stop the kids from going there. So we'll spend all this money and we still won't get to our end goal of giving them a spot that they will use. It will be there, it will be safer, but will they use it? And again, I worry about just spending all that money. So, can you help me as staff, as Matt, if you can help me understand the slope and the degree of slope and everything else, will it be even close to the grade that Beautiful Joe is? And is that a fair question? I'm not even too sure, but again, that's where I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to visualize a picture of what this hill will look like with the fear that nobody's going to use it because it's too much of a kiddie hill. So that's my question.
It's a good question, and one I unfortunately don't have a detailed answer to. I don't know, unless Rob's finding it in the report somewhere, what the the degree of the hill is. I would doubt that it would be as steep as Beautiful Joe Hill, because to do that we would have to do that and have a long enough runoff at the end. We would have to build it up to such a height that it would be. I cannot imagine that that's the plan.
And that's the conclusion that I was coming up with too. And that's, I guess I was looking for somebody to either confirm or deny what I was thinking.
Yeah. I think to the other part of Councillor Vickers' comments, which are very valuable, I think the only way that we would then stop people from tobogganing somewhere else is by installing something to stop them, whether that be fencing along the top of the Beautiful Joe bank, or whether that be some sort of blockage at the top of the fairgrounds hill and things, and obviously that's something that council would have to consider whether they wanted to or not.
Councillor Bell?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. It really is a thing for society and to benefit and to advertise our municipality, that I can only say that within my own grandchildren, my opinion on my own grandkids is that they spend way too much time on the computer and they need to get outside. And I can only reflect on my own youth growing up that I did spend a lot of time outside, and I spent a lot of time on a toboggan. And I think if we don't encourage a positive place for them to enjoy, to go and their families. I just think that this is something that the municipality of Meaford can set itself quite literally apart from some surrounding municipalities for quite a distance. That I think that when it gets advertised that it's available, I think that it will be truly a drawing card for families to come and to see and experience and have an afternoon. And things in society, it costs money. It costs money to run the arena, but we believe in figure skating and winter sports and hockey. We believe in those kinds of things. So from my aspect, yes, Councillor Vickers, we're going to spend ultimately a lot of money. And I just think that we just need to have something here to encourage a very healthy, wholesome, and as safe as it possibly can be, a hill that we can advertise for all to enjoy, even adults whose backs will allow them to go down on an inner tube. Sorry, but because those are those afternoons that you look back raising your family or being a caregiver, responsible for the youth coming along. If we can encourage them and we can make them look back and say, what a wonderful time I had growing up, and right here in our municipality and in the town of Meaford was the place where I got to have that. I don't know if we can put a price on that kind of thing. It's like volunteering for an organization and there's young people involved in it. You'll never maybe know if you've changed the life of one young person, but maybe someday somebody will say something to you and you were part of forming a very positive outcome. And that's why I would really like to see us move forward on this. And yes, Councillor Vickers, it carries a heavy price. And thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I really appreciate your comments, Councillor Bell, and you make me think of a couple of occasions when there were quite competitive races with Her Worship involved on go-karts and at the urban slide when we had that in Meaford, and it was great fun. But I have heard lately from a couple of folks a comment that really struck a bell with me, and folks said to me, Council is really only focused these days on roads and bridges. And I thought, well, yeah, we are and we have been. But I think this is an opportunity to show the community that we also focus on our youth and recognizing through COVID in particular, the number of young families that we've attracted to Meaford. It's just quite incredible. And we know that from the enrollment at our school that there are quite an uptick of kids now in Meaford, and I think this would give us an opportunity to be seen as really recognizing that and doing something really great for families and for the youth. And I know it's going to require some education and promotion, and we'll hear about that as we move further with this project to make sure that people understand where Center Street is and where the hill is and so on. But then we can feel comfortable in knowing that we're offering a safe opportunity for kids to get that outdoor activity that you're speaking to, and I just think that's so important. And I know it's going to eat up our DC charges, but with the growth that's upon it, that fund will rebuild itself, and we can go forward and do other things in other parks. So I'm very much in favor of moving forward with this today.
Thank you, Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I really can't figure out why Councillor Bell is so passionate about this. They don't make toboggans that big for you anymore, okay?
You can build one.
Having said that, Councillor Vickers, I agree with you 100% that that's a lot of money spent. Now, tell me if I'm wrong. We have taken this money from developers for park land dedication. It cannot go to an existing park, like we were just explained about McCarroll Park. It can go to a future park. We can't spend that money on roads. It has to go to a park because that's where it was taken from the developers. So if that money's there and you're not going to spend it on a new park, that money will be there till the cows come home. And unless I'm wrong, please correct me.
Councillor Kentner.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. I brought this idea forward largely out of concern for the safety at Beautiful Joe. But I was very, very pleased that the Parks Advisory Committee has evaluated this and has given it their blessing. And I just wonder, Steve, if you can confirm that it will be a hill that will be a challenge, that will be fun, because I don't know how to interpret grades and percentages of grades and stuff like that. So it's, but I trust that if the Parks Advisory Committee is behind it, that they see value in this.
Thank you. And Councillor Greenfield?
Thank you, Mayor Clovis. And thanks again to Councillor Vickers for his comments. You're right, Paul. Beautiful Joe Hill is still going to be popular with a lot of people. I don't know how high a fence we would have to build to keep people out of there, but I think once this hill is developed, it'll take the vast majority of the slate riders and tobogganers if we invite them to it and show them that, hey, this is a great place to be. I see this again as a futuristic piece of property. We've got the trail down to Trout Hollow or up from Trout Hollow, whichever way. I think it'd be easier to go down to Trout Hollow than come up. Potential for pickleball courts. That lawn area, I can see kids playing soccer or throwing frisbees, footballs, whatever. But in the forested area, on the map, there's really not much showing except a bunch of contours. But with a bit of work and a bit of expense, I can see snowshoe trails there, cross-country skiing. I think there's great potential, and there's going to be demand for these outdoor activities, and some of them, a lot of our folks from the southern part of the province and even from other nations who are coming to our country, they're going to be taking these things up. They're going to be wanting to do them, and so I think the potential is quite high here. We got to start someplace. The Toboggan Hill is definitely a good phase one, and again, over 10, 12, 15 years, I think this is going to be a well-used piece of property and outdoors at its best. Thank you.
Councillor Greenfield, I have a couple of questions. Oh, do you want to go ahead first?
If you want.
Ed?
Rob had his hand up there a couple times, and I don't know whether Rob wants to speak to it, but I do have a couple more questions if you would wish.
All right, Rob, we'll go to you first then.
Thank you. I just want to explain a bit about development charges and how that works. When council passes a development charges bylaw, you're also approving the capital plan and the projects within the background study to which you are going to be collecting money from developers. It's all about full transparency. If you don't do that, a developer is going to challenge your development charges saying you're collecting money for the... So as we move through the update to the development charges study coming forward, probably in the new year, early in the new year, it will identify the projects. And I think one of the recommendations here is to say that we will be including the Toboggan Hill as a priority in our development charges background study, so that the consultant knows that when he brings that study forward, it's going to be one of the things that we are charging for. Right now, this park, Legion Park, McCarroll Park, are not in our development charges current development charges, because that was completed in 2011 and just completed again. So the intent is that those projects will include, and that's why we want to go forward with them. You can change a program through the development charges, so the money we've collected will then apply to the new projects through that process. And you'll learn more about it from the consultant who speak much better about it than I do as well. Just the other thing is, one of the key things here is the design is very important, not only to ensure what the slope and safety is going to be, but we're also going to have to amend our certificate of approval from the Ministry of Environment for these lands. Because it was a landfill, we're continuing to have to do monitoring. We have to make sure that whatever we do does not affect it. So it's very important in obtaining that certificate of approval that the environmental assessment dictates, or the design dictates that. So that's where we will find out what sort of grades we can get. And until we do that, we're just hoping that we can. So that's a very important part of the process to understand. So.
Thanks, Rob. Now you have a question?
No, I had a question before too, but so this project's kind of, is this the only project we have then? And I'm looking maybe at staff or at the Parks Committee. Like, is there any other suggestion? Because like it looks quite clear to me that once we do this project, the account will be gone. Like, it'll be used up. So what's the next project? Because I want to decide whether I think the next project is maybe even more important than this project.
So I think, as Rob said, council's in a very good position right now to sort of say what the next projects are, because when we come to do the development charges study, that's going to be for a 10-year period, and so we're going to sort of say, here's all the things that we want to do. And Deputy Mayor's point about new development is important here, because we continue to charge development charges, and so, you know, if taking the money out of it next year, that account will be replenished at some degree of speed, depending on what the development is. Council's already approved a master plan for Legion Park, so that's certainly one of the ones that's on my mind as we start thinking about development charges study, because that's clearly an expansion of services, and so would qualify, because there's really nothing there right now. We have talked about doing a St Vincent Park master plan. Again, that's a green space, so if we want to do anything there, then that may be eligible. As Rob said earlier, some part of the McCarroll Park plan that you've just approved may be DC eligible, depending on how we see that as an expansion. So there's, I got to say, over the last year, we've done a lot of parks planning. There is a lot of parks projects out there, and this says nothing about any work at the harbour or at Memorial Park or anywhere like that. So we probably have got plans that are for more money than is likely to be available in the study, but so I think that's where council's going to have to make some of those decisions.
Matt, I'm wondering if there is any room for expansion in this, for potential expansion in years to come, in this schematic that is here. I'm looking at an enclosed structure for a court surface for pickleball, I'm assuming, is it? Number two
so
on the map.
it is a surface. I can't remember what type of surface it is, because we are under some restrictions because of the Ministry of Environment as to what hard surfaces we can put down. Things like there will never likely be a building on this site, because we can't build on the landfill. But yes, I'm imagining that sort of multi-use, and you know, very clearly on the plan it talks about a multi-use court. We shouldn't necessarily just say that this would be designed solely for pickleball, but maybe it would be in the future. But yeah, it would need to be fenced. It would need to have a hard surface of some variety, and so on.
But I'm wondering if it's one court surface, or if there's room
Again,
for expansion.
I think this is something that a detailed design would have to do. This is very much a concept.
Okay.
And to be honest, we wouldn't really be looking at that level of detailed design next year, I don't think, because that is, I believe, phase 3. So I think we'd be going out and concentrating very much on the Toboggan In Hill, because that is the engineering bit that's more complicated and has to be designed specifically. Mm-hmm. But yes, I imagine from the space, depending on how it gets laid out, that there may be able to be a couple of courts down there, but I wouldn't have thought more than that.
Because again, with a pickleball, a very active pickleball club, which we've heard about in our community, I think, a minimum of 3 courts would accommodate their regular play. So just to, to make sure that if we are going to be thinking along those lines, that there is room for expansion, not now, but
Well,
when
and
we
I
can.
think, and this perhaps goes to a different conversation, but the facility needs analysis is coming, and that's looking at buildings in particular. But as we go through that process, it might make council think about some other things. Do we still need 2 ball diamonds? Could one of those become courts or a different use? There's lots and lots of options out there.
And another thought, too, is, I recall several years ago, probably last term, when we heard the possibility of plastic ice as a skating rink, which might be incorporated into a park setting. Given that the instability of our winters, where we can't necessarily bank on natural ice surfaces outdoors, but something that could be manufactured for skating throughout, even in the summertime for roller skating and so on, all to encourage outdoor participation for growth for our kids.
Yeah, I think there's many options, and we should be very conscious of changing desires. Pickleball is obviously very prominent at the moment
Now,
in this community. In 5 years' time, it may well be something different. It was something different 5 years ago. So we always have to keep an eye on those trends, and we're continuing to do that. But it's true that we've just gone through the wellbeing study that talks about needing more activity space for youth, for seniors, for the community at large, and so we should be looking at lots of different options and being creative in how we use the spaces.
Yeah, I agree. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And going back to what Councillor Vickers was bringing up earlier, do we have to follow the recommendations of a 1 to 3 hill if it's going to be grass? Because every hill I've been on in my life, mostly in Owen Sound, but is a 1-to-1 grass hill. And they grew grass on them for 50 years. I don't understand why you can't have a more than 1 to 3 ratio, because if you have a 1 to 3 grass hill for Toboggan Hill, it's not going to be used. Simple as that.
So the document that's provided with this report is a Canadian Standards Association's guideline, so it is a guideline. It's not law. Having said that, anything that we did would have to be signed off by an engineer, and obviously they have legal responsibilities for anything they sign off for. So I just don't know enough about this to say what's possible and what isn't, and a lot of it will be location specific as well, because it depends on runoff.
For me to vote on this, I would need to know that before we go ahead with it, because I couldn't condone a 1 to 3 hill. Nobody's going to use that. That's for toddlers.
So I think I'd encourage council to remember that we're talking about a guiding document here. If we go out and council puts money in the budget for 2022 to do design work, that design will come back before in 2023 council decides whether to budget for actual construction of a hill as well. Mm-hmm. This was very much a theoretical exercise, and in fact it started we're getting on for 2 years ago now, because we had an in-person PIC before any of this sort of stuff started. So, it was very much at that PIC talking about what people would like to see there. And so what the consultants have looked at is it possible? Yes, it's possible. But we would now need to go to design to know sort of whether it's exciting.
Councillor Vickers.
And with the comments that have just been made about, is this the right place to spend the money? Because you can't spend the same dollar twice. And that's something I've painfully found out in farming over the years, trying to spend the same dollar twice. And this is what I'm trying to warn my fellow councillors, that once we spend this money, like it's gone. So if this is an incorrect guess or assumption, then there's no double take backs. So are we sure we want to put this park ahead of Legion Park? Are we sure we want to put this park ahead of St. Vincent Park? Like that's where I'm struggling with. And having said that, and I think I'm doing this right, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Your Worship, I'd like to bring a motion forward to defer a decision on this until we get more of a solid idea of where we're going to go. And I would like for that to be a one-year period.
Okay. There's a motion on the floor to defer this decision for a one-year period.
If I'm doing it right. I think that's what I want to do.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think that is possible in terms of adopting the master plan as a guiding document, which actually this resolution doesn't do. It's not really possible in terms of the development charges study, because we're going to be bringing that forward before this time next year for adoption, because as Rob said, if we're going to keep charging those charges, we have to be able to say this is what we're going to do it for. There won't be any more information unless we invest some more money in the near future to get that engineering work done, specifically on the toboggan in hill. We can do that. That then, if council then decided not to install the hill, it would be lost money because there wouldn't be anything else we could do with that engineering report. And I don't have a number for that right to hand. So yeah, it's a case of, do you want to get this in a development charges background study, so you have the possibility of doing it, bearing in mind that being in the study doesn't mean that you have to do it. It just means that it's there and available if we want to use development charges money. Or do you want to sort of try and get some of this engineering work done as soon as possible to find out more?
So if I may, Your Worship? So my concern is, are we sure we want to do work at this park, or is there another park we would rather have a higher priority? If this is our highest priority, then I'm fine with that. It's it's a decision of council. But if, like I said, you can't spend the same dollar twice, and to me it does seem like I just hate to do another report also just to put it on the shelf to say it's not what we wanted. So there's another $60,000 gone in a report that we authorized, and I can understand when members of the community are asking why so many of these consulting reports, and this is where I'm trying to just make 100% sure this is where we want to go in this park, and as opposed to another park. Councillor
Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'd like to answer that statement. This has been on the table. This is year 6 or 7 for me on council, and it's been on the table since I started in 2014. Toboggan Hill, Toboggan Hill, Toboggan Hill. So I do believe it is a priority. We've talked more about a Toboggan Hill than any other park other than Memorial Park in this chair. As a member of the Parks Committee, which 9 of us sat around, we think it's a priority. So if I can speak on their behalf, we have another councillor that's on the same committee. He could maybe add his 2 cents worth, but I live 25 kilometers from here, so the parks in Meaford really shouldn't matter to me, but they do. And I believe this is a priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Greenfield?
I agree with Councillor Bartley. We have been talking, not just the Parks Committee, because it's a fairly recent committee, but we have been talking about this 6 or 7 years ago. I expressed concern to our former treasurer, Mr. Chapman, many years ago about the potential liability at Beautiful Joe, and it's still there, and Councillor Vickers is right, it'll still be there. But no, this is something that the Parks Committee is good with it, and I think this is, to me, the whole concept is exciting. I mean, this is a former landfill site, and our municipality is taking the reins here and saying, hey, we're going to make something useful for our residents, for our community, and I want to see it move ahead at least to some degree.
Okay. Matt, you made a comment that I just want to reconfirm here. And Rob, I guess this question is too, with regard to the development charges. The recommendation reads that to approve the inclusion of the Center Street Parkland Master Plan as a top priority in the development charges background study. Does it have to identify specifically the Toboggan Hill as presented here? Or could it be a recreational parkland with multi-use recreational parkland? Would that suffice in the development charges background study?
So what our consultant will be provided is all the background guiding documents that we've been provided. So the Center Street Park, the Legion Park, McCarroll Park, St. Vincent Park. So they'll be provided all of those. They'll evaluate what we can and can't charge for based on growth related. And it's tied to our current level of service, and then with the growth, how much additional service that we're going to need to provide. What this is saying in the resolution is that this will be priority number one for being included if we can include it. I think it's easy to say this can be included from a park development point of view because it's an undeveloped park. We have growth. It makes sense that we can include it. What goes into parks is at our discretion.
So just because we include the Toboggan Hill as suggested 1 to 3 and in terms of degree, we don't have to accept that. We can change our minds on that specific part of it.
I think when it comes down to the development charges and you see everything together, you can adjust it.
Adjust it?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Councillor Vickers.
So maybe I misunderstood this, and I'm glad this is coming out. So this really isn't a study looking at just, what's the name of the park? I forget now. Center Street Park. So this isn't a study just looking at Center Street? Because I kind of took it that that's what it was. It was all going to be around Center Street, and that the other parks would just, be on their own.
So the development charges background study is going to look at all of our needs, parks, roads, sewage plant, it's the big one. So it's going to look at all of those items. The detailed engineering, though, that's being approved here is strictly focused on a toboggan park at the landfill site. So that's number, one is putting it in the background study, and then the other is to include the detailed design in the budget for next year.
So, in effect, what this resolution would do is two things. It would say that you want to put the Centre Street landfill site as a priority park in the development charges background study with an expected cost for redevelopment of about $1.65 million. And we'd include the $60,000 for design in the budget, so council will have another opportunity at that stage to decide whether you want to do design of a toboggan hill or not.
Okay, that makes it easier.
So I will stick with my deferral motion based on that the development charges study will happen regardless whether this passes or not. Is that correct?
It will, but this will not be included in the development
per.
charges study if we don't pass a resolution, because it won't be a municipal plan until council's told us it's a municipal plan.
Well,
No?
they've already adopted the Center Street master plan as a guiding
True.
document.
Very true.
Which has the toboggan. This is taking it to raising that toboggan hill to priority number one for it to be included in it. So council's already endorsed a toboggan hill through the master plan.
That's true. Thank you, Rob. My apologies, council. I've forgotten that. So yes, so a deferral would be fine at this stage. It would just push all of these timelines back a year.
So I would stick with that
So
motion.
your motion then is to defer for 1 year until the background study
It's completed, yes.
is completed. Is there a second?
Or less than a year, either or sort of a thing. Like, once you know the background study, I think we'll have a better idea. I just remember one other time that Matt wouldn't let us defer because of proper procedure without a timeline. So that's why I was adding the year.
So Matt, you have the
I think
motion to defer for.
Defer until after the DC background study is complete is fine. What that will mean is that you're not giving any guidance to the consultant that this is more important than any of the other plans. And then they will do their analysis and bring something forward for council's consideration.
All right, is there a seconder for that motion? Sorry, no seconder. All right, so we're back now then to the recommendation in front of us that we approve the inclusion of the Centre Street Parkland Master Plan as a top priority, and that includes a toboggan hill. Is there any further discussion at this point? Then I'll call the question. All in favor of this recommendation going forward, and those against? And that is carried. Okay, Development Services, DEV 2021-34, zoning bylaw amendment for 1 Legion Road. And the recommendation reads that the Committee of the Whole recommend Council of the Municipality of Meaford enact a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 60-2009 of the Municipality of Meaford to permit the redevelopment of the former Legion into a 5-story apartment building containing 150 units. Number 2, accept $250,000 as a financial contribution towards the development of Legion Park to address the bonusing requirements of the official plan and pursuant to Section 37 of the Planning Act. And point 3, direct staff to give notice to those parties that provided oral or written comments on the application that the zoning bylaw amendment for 1 Legion Road will be considered by Council on October 18, 2021. And I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table. Councillor Vickers, Councillor Bell. Any discussion? Questions, comments? Deputy Mayor?
Your Worship, thank you. And I have a few questions, but I'll just start with a couple if I may. The 5 stories, Mr. Armstrong, we know that's been a hot topic, shall I say, and I see that 5 stories are recommended here with this particular project. I wondered if you could speak to that, and in relation to that, are we setting precedent if we approve 5 stories for this particular development?
Your Worship, so a 5-story, where it's appropriate, needs to be evaluated on a site-by-site basis. That's one thing I've constantly said. I think for this property in particular, with the majority, there are a couple, but the majority of residential homes adjacent to this property are quite a bit higher, so a steep bank behind them. So from their perspective, they won't see a 5-story building. They'll only see 2 or 3 stories behind them, which again, that comes back to ours, right? So based on the adjacent uses in this area, it's been planning staff's opinion all along that the 5 stories is appropriate on this location based on surrounding land uses. In addition, I've indicated this is not our first 5-story permission that has been granted by zoning, and that's what is being sought here today. So it's actually going to be our second 5-story building. It's outside of the heritage district, so it doesn't have any heritage implications that need to be applied. Through site plan approval and final detailed design, we'll be looking at some of the architectural elements and that will come through site plan to make sure that it fits in from an architectural point of view as we proceed forward. So I guess that's our comments with regard to the 5 stories as it was applied here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Councillor Kentner?
Thank you, through your worship. I'd just like to go on record at that point to our CAO that I strongly believe, as chair of the Heritage Committee, that the Heritage District is far too small for the valuable heritage assets that we have in the municipality, even urban Meaford. Thank you.
Councillor Bartley, and then Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I probably didn't read this enough, Rob, but can you explain to me what is the bonusing requirements of the official plan? What is that?
So through your worship, the under Section 37 of the Planning Act, you can apply a bonusing requirement to development that's going to exceed your normal requirements. So normal, like I said, 3 stories. You can go up to 5 intermunicipality by providing bonusing. And our official plan provides a number of criteria that can be met for that. If this was a 5-story affordable housing project, so they were going to provide housing for all low income or for, that could meet the criteria in our official plan as one of the things. There's a number of other criteria within the official plan that meets it. One of the things is assisting the municipality in park development. And we provided the Legion Park master plan with the cost estimates to the developer. And they proposed that they would contribute to assist us in the Legion Park development as meeting their bonusing. So this is a contribution to something over and above the other requirements that they still have to provide, which includes the cash in lieu of parkland. So we'll get additional money from them from parkland. The development charges, they'll all be subject to that. They actually have to also extend services on Legion Road to get to their development, because right now there's no sanitary sewer that's adequate. So they'll have to do that. But it's that contribution. I will say that for anybody that wants to know a bit of the history of bonusing, it really started in Toronto when the public art. That was the bonusing that happened in Toronto with Mill Lastman and the Moose. Bit of the history of it. Section 37 bonusing has been removed from the Planning Act. It's being taken out because of the subjectivity of it and the question of it on how it got applied. And it's been replaced by something that they call a community benefit charge. That community benefit charge can only be applicable provincially to buildings greater than 4 stories, so we would only be able to apply 5. You actually have to do a study. It's a percentage of the value of the land at a certain date. It's almost like calculating parkland dedication. That's on the go forward in about a year's time, because you have a bit of a grandfathering under your existing provisions. We continually are allowed to use the current bonusing provisions to do that. So it's how we've applied it. In the other situation, it was a cost to keep the existing heritage facade, and how much that was going to cost the developer to do that. We had another development that was in discussions, and we said, seems to be that around the 300 is what we've applied as a charge towards bonusing. But it's really got to come from them and accepted by council. We don't dictate what that amount is, but that's sort of how we've applied it to date.
Okay, and if I may, so off the top of your head, would you know what the Legion Park plan charge is? And that's not the bridge part of it. And would this money come ahead of the development or at the end of the development?
Through your worship, it comes at signing the site plan agreement. So before the development starts, so they'd be paying the bonusing, they would be paying for the cash in lieu of parkland. They would be paying that all up front before they would start.
Thank you.
And the phase 1 of the Legion Park development, I think was, looked at the estimate today, $360,000.
Thank you.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Rob. Rob, I think you mentioned earlier that the Legion Park was not eligible for development charges. Did you say that, or?
No, it is one of the plans that will be provided to our consultant, Hempson, who's doing the development charges background to see if certain things can be included in that, in the background study. It's not in there right now but I think when council adopted the plan as a guiding document, they also said to see what could be included in development charges as we do the study.
Okay, thank you for that. I've been thinking about this this sum and of $250 I see the municipality doing some bending here by going 5 stories. I'm okay with that. I don't have a problem with that. But I know some of our residents do, and likely will come forward when they see that number 5. We've also allowed for some more minimal setbacks from property lines. So I'm just going to throw out a friendly amendment. I think Legion Park, yes, it will be to the benefit of all, but primarily to this Georgian Terrace project. So I'm wondering if we can't go for 300,000. The first phase at Legion Park is 342. The final projection is about $1.25 million. So I'm thinking the more we could possibly gather up front, the better prepared we would be. So I'd like to make an amendment on number 2 and to change it to $300,000.
Okay, is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Bell? Okay, Councillor Bartley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think we just heard from the CEO that we cannot dictate
Right, we can't
these
ask.
charges. Is that correct?
Rob, over to you.
We can tie it to an approval, through your worship, we can tie it to approval. Because this is committee of the whole, if you want to suggest 3, we can, prior to it coming back to council, we can seek concurrence from the applicant that they would agree to it. So
Thank you.
as far as the 2-step process, I think that's another advantage of having this in committee and then council.
Thank you.
Councillor Kentner?
Thank you. Through your worship, this project has grown a little bit since the last time we saw it to 150 units. And I was surprised or kind of disappointed that all there is a rough sketch of the appearance of it now in the report. And we've seen some beautiful glossy pictures and posters of, and even, publications of what this project is going to look like. And it does look wonderful. But I would like to see some pictures. I hope that before we vote in October, that we will see a more concrete version of what this is going to actually look like.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion, sorry, go ahead, Councillor.
I'll deal with the amendment first, please, your worship.
All right, is there any further discussion on the amendment? Then I will call a question. All in favor of this as amended? Any against? No, that is carried. Thank you. All right, so go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, your worship. Just a couple of additional questions for Mr. Armstrong, if I may. This is a big project for Meaford, 150 units, and I'm wondering, does this, in your opinion, meet our priority of attainable housing for Meaford?
Through your worship, they have not identified that any of the units as being meeting any attainable costing criteria. This is just, I think, the proposed tenure that they have identified in their marketing as condominium. So it's purchased units, but I'm not familiar with the price and not proposing it as an. Usually when developers propose stuff as being attainable, they're also looking at financial breaks. But we have to. I think what we're trying to achieve is housing for everyone. So right from the big spectrum down to the more attainable. So it's within the spectrum of what we're trying to achieve. We don't have this type of development really in our community, condo, apartment style with underground parking.
Exactly, and if I may continue, your worship.
Please go ahead.
Do you feel at this point, Mr. Armstrong, that this build is going to meet any climate change initiatives? We do have that motion that Councillor Bartley brought forward, and I'm just wondering if any of those concerns are being identified during the construction phase of this project, and what those initiatives might be.
Yeah, through your worship, obviously the building code side of things covers a lot of elements with regard to the building itself. But as we review and have been reviewing the detailed elements of the stormwater in particular, that's the big one, and low impact design. The unfortunate thing is we don't have those criteria yet. It's what we're trying to develop under our site plan design guidelines. But it is being reviewed, and we're trying to achieve as much as we can in relation to it. I think the old, how people used to suggest that green roofs and things like that, actually one of the things in talking to our new director of development services who's coming on, he's looking at other forms other than the green roofs, and so we'll work with him as under the detailed site plan approval and see what we can achieve on this with regard to the proposal. But unfortunately, we don't have those guidelines to drive it at this point in time, but we'll work to see what we can under the site plan approval process.
So at that point, perhaps we can suggest things like EV charging stations in the underground and that sort of thing.
Again, back to that, the Ontario Building Code now has requirements for provision of those within buildings itself. So obviously, we start with the Ontario Building Code and what you're required to provide, and then work with the developer on other things for sure.
That's great. Thank you.
Councillor Bartley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Deputy Mayor, for bringing up the climate change. It was down on my list also, so thank you very much. Now, I know social media isn't the most reliable source, but we read on social media actually this week that this project is sold out. Is there any truth to that?
Taking the position as a professional planner, I'm here to recommend council based on the planning merits. How it's marketed and how it's sold, that really is outside, and I haven't been following that at all.
Okay.
Councillor Vickers?
Thank you, Your Worship. And concerning the 5 stories, I think I can support this proposal, being that is backing onto a hill that doesn't have neighbors, to the south being a park, and there was some talk about is this setting a precedent? And I don't have any problems at all saying yay or nay to each one on their individual status. We have a couple other ones that are proposed, that could be proposed in Meaford, and I have an opinion on them. But on this one, I'm quite happy with the 5 stories, especially with the even more generous donation that Councillor Greenfield has suggested for them to give. I'm fine with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, are we ready to call the question then? We have had the amendment, and that has approved, so the recommendation would be the amended recommendation that we would be voting on at this stage. And I will call the question. All in favor of the amended motion, and that is carried. Thank you. Moving on to DEV 2021-36 is the consent agreement that the Committee of the Whole recommend to the Council. An act of bylaw to authorize a consent agreement pertaining to 357038, the Blue Mountains Meaford Town Line. Could I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Kentner, thank you. Councillor Greenfield. And comments, questions, discussions? Councillor Vickers.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And having read the report, I found it a little confusing what all was happening. It seemed like it was a lot of different balls up in the air. And I just wondered if we could get a bit more of a verbal explanation of, because you're taking a property and splitting it and adding it to another property. Am I getting that right? Or can you help me understand it a bit better, Rob?
Yes, through your worship. So through the consent process that goes through our Committee of Adjustment, they have approved the lot addition that's proposed. Typically what would happen is through that consultation, the Conservation Authority has identified potential species at risk that need to be further evaluated before development occurs on a property. And normally that would be put within our zoning bylaw as saying, before you build in this area, you have to do an EIS to confirm that you're not going to affect the species at risk. What we've sort of worked out was, because we're into an OP review, we're going to be updating our zoning bylaw, that it's a lot easier just to put these agreements on title, notifying people who may take interest in the property that they'll have to do that. But then when we do our update to the bylaw, we'll put it into the bylaw so it's very clear that you have to go through a process, do your environmental impact study, satisfy those requirements, lift the holding symbol, and you can build through that process. So this is sort of a stopgap for us to address the Conservation Authority issues of species at risk. So, it's already been dealt with. The lot creation process has already gone through the Committee of Adjustment, and this is just a process to satisfy a condition that the committee established to address the Conservation Authority. We've done these, quite a few of these recently, in a way to deal with things a little easier for the public to finalize their applications.
Okay, go ahead.
So I guess, and maybe this question is somewhat irrelevant because it's already gone through the Committee of Adjustment. So does the one piece of the property then able to get an entrance off Foster Street? And if you can't find it, because really it's not irrelevant to the discussion. It's just a question that I had wondered about.
Yeah, and I don't have that because actually I don't. Kirsten and Margaret pretty much take the committee reports. This is just the condition. I can find that out, those details for you, but they would have been all dealt with as part of the severance approval through the Committee of Adjustment.
Yep.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thanks again, Your Worship. Through you to Rob. Rob, in the world of planning, and I know you're still there just about every day for for some part of your day. Do you see a lot more of these requests coming down? And I guess when we review our official plan, do we need to beef it up a bit to address things like this? Is this something that's going to become more imperative in the future?
Yeah, through your worship. So as we go through the official plan review and zoning bylaw, we'll be taking that information that is provided from the Conservation Authority and identifying these areas up front so that it's already in place under our planning documents, should they apply. And it's coming out of the Conservation Authority work, as well as the Grey County work that they did with their natural heritage study. So we'll be incorporating those into our planning documents so that it's more in place. We're just in catch-up mode, I guess you could say, in that it's provincial policy we need to deal with, and whenever you deal with the planning application, you have to account for the current requirements. It's just us catching up to that, I guess, is the best way to indicate it.
Okay, thanks.
Any further questions? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor of this recommendation going forward, and that is carried. Okay, moving on to updates from members. And we have County Council up first, as usual. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I put a little different spin on the update this time in that I'm just going to focus on one discussion from County Council that's very pertinent to Meaford, and if you'd like to add from other items that were on that agenda, Your Worship, please do so. County Council met virtually for the last time on September 23rd. We will resume meeting in person in chambers October 14th. Members of County Council have voluntarily submitted their proof of double vaccination to the HR department. So as I said, I'm going to focus on one issue today, and that is the bridges 21 and 22 located on the Holland-Sydenham town line near Wagner. And I'm just going to provide a little background information for anyone who's listening. This is the deviation boundary between our municipality and the township of Chatsworth. These two bridges were closed as a result of a recommendation of poor condition from a regularly scheduled bridge inspection assessment. The chair and vice chair, Stefan Tremblay and Brad Torrey from the Wagner Roads and Bridges Committee, presented their concerns to County Council. They spoke to the economic impact of the closed bridges on agricultural operations in the vicinity, to the safety issues connected with the detour route, which involves a long steep hill, and to the $1.1 million of annual taxation paid by the farmers affected by the closure of bridges 21 and 22. Earlier in 2021, Meaford approached the county to assess whether they should be responsible for bridge number 22. In 1928, a bylaw was passed at the county which states that any bridge measuring 20 feet in length or more and is located on a town line is the responsibility of the county. A measuring event took place on August the 20th, which I was present at, along with our County Director of Transportation, Pat Hoy, Meaford's Acting Director, Jessica Wiley, representatives from Chatsworth staff, from Ainley and Associates, and about 30 neighbors of the twin bridges. A measurement was conducted, and the result is that the bridge number 22 is 6.1 meters in span, so meets the 20-foot criteria. So the question then becomes, what happens now? After much discussion by County Council, it was unanimously agreed in a recorded vote to direct county staff to undertake the preparation of a further report which will address the following questions. Firstly, the history of the structure, including when it was built, who built the structure, and who paid for the original construction and ongoing maintenance of these bridges. Transportation Services will work with Grey Roots Archives staff to search any potential historical records. 2, what are the liabilities, risks associated with the structure in its current state? 3, confirming the costs would be to replace structure 22. 4, confirming the plans, intentions of the municipality of Meaford and the township of Chatsworth with respect to structure 21. E.g., if structure 22 were to be replaced, would the municipality of Meaford and the township of Chatsworth commit to replacing and maintaining structure 21? 5, is there more cost-effective solutions for all parties? Examples, replacing the two structures with one and sharing the cost 3 ways. 6, are there other options that the municipality of Meaford and the township of Chatsworth could consider that the county could assist with? Examples, leasing the road structures to landowners and farmers in the area that would benefit from keeping this access open, making this road a private road, which would include the structures, and transfer ownership to landowners or farmers through a road association that would own and maintain the road structures. 7, other legislation and legal considerations that may need to be explored further. And an additional comment that was brought forward at County Council was whether or not the two streams could be joined into one. And I know that is a thought that has come forward a few times in discussion, but Director Pat Hoyt did seem to think that was a possibility. So that'll be explored as well, and certainly I will bring remarks back to this council when that report is presented back to county. So, Your Worship, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Not to that particular aspect of it. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. You certainly covered that very well. But what I do want to let folks know is that we did have a presentation, as we had heard from the task force that looks at county funding for healthcare initiatives in the county. And the presentation was from the president of Georgian College with regard to the implementation of a 4-year degree granting program, BSCN, Bachelor of Nursing, that will be undertaken in September of 2022. That'll be the first enrollment for that program. This is really, really exciting news for our community. It means that a degree granting program will be the first of its kind in a community college here, will be available to students who don't have to go into the city or go elsewhere for education and professional training at the nursing level. But in addition to nurses, the Bachelor of Nursing degree, there will also be coursework available for PSWs and other members of professional groupings that that may be taking advantage of courses available at Georgian College, including policing and other ancillary healthcare professions. Very, very exciting for this community, and it has been approved, and the funding will be there. I did inquire as to the cost of a term, and it is expensive, as we know. Advanced education is expensive, the tune of $4,000 to $5,000 a term for tuition. But they've got a very robust scholarship program going as well that folks can, and the communities can help with regard to offering scholarships and other forms of assistance, financial assistance to potential students. So I just wanted to share that with everyone because I think this is remarkable when it comes to our program and our work with primary care, healthcare access, because nurses, of course, are in short supply now. Many are burned out after the experience with the pandemic, and to have this close to home, an opportunity to improve that ratio and to provide them with a quality education is phenomenal. So it's the only other good news that we had to celebrate, I think. I don't think there was anything else.
Those are the important points, Your Worship, I believe.
Thank you. Anything on other boards or from anyone else in council? Councillor Greenfield.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just briefly from Grace Auble, we did get our first look at the draft budget at our monthly meeting. I believe right now it stands at 4.6% overall, Paul, is that right? I think it's about 4.1 for our municipality, and
Yes.
Which is about a $10,000 increase. It would put our payments to about 210, 211. This is the draft budget. And I guess the only other, I was going to say the only other exciting item, they were all exciting, but we approved the purchase of an all-electric vehicle for conservation use, and it's a Kona, a Hyundai Kona, I think it is. About $30,000 and about $2,800 to get the charging station. It's in, I think maybe all in around 30 or 32,000. So we're kind of excited about that. I hope it works out well. I guess time will tell.
Thank you, Councillor Greenfield. Anything else, Deputy Mayor?
Your Worship, thank you. I just wanted to mention to Council and to anyone who is listening that the Economic Development Committee will be meeting on Wednesday, 3 o'clock. I was just checking the location to confirm, in the terrace room right here at Meaford Hall. So if anyone is interested in attending, please feel free to come and join us Wednesday at 3 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you. And moving on now to the building report.
I would really like to mention that,
Well,
Your Worship,
please
if I
go
may.
ahead. That is no surprise.
After 8 months, the permit total is almost 87 million. So we're getting closer to those three digits, except then there'll be 9 digits, I think, altogether. But house building strong, the multi-residential, $36 million worth of permits. Agriculture strong. It's been a great year thus far, and slowed down a little bit July to August, which is customary for construction, but I think there's going to be a lot of people anxious to get projects done between now and the end of the year, so keep our fingers crossed. I think that 100 number is well within reach.
Thank you, Councillor Greenfield. Yes, very exciting news. I think that 36 million in multi-res includes our long-term care facility. I think that's come in. Isn't that correct, Rob?
No.
Sorry?
The long-term care facility, the
It's in the
building permit
multi-use, yes.
is in that, yeah. Okay, can I have a motion to, oh, sorry, we've missed the 2022 council calendar. You're pushing this year ahead quickly. It's moving fast enough, but now we're into the calendar for 2022, and we just need to receive that. Can I have a motion to move out of committee of the whole, please? And thank you, Deputy Mayor, and I need a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Kentner. All in favor? And that is carried. And we move on to, are there any notices of motion coming forward? Seeing none, we will deal with the motion ahead of us today. We have 9.2, Councillor Bell is proposing a development of a sidewalk artwork policy. And you will move that, Councillor Bell, thank you. And a seconder, please, Councillor Vickers, thank you. Over to you, Councillor Bell, if you would like to speak to it.
Well, thanks, Madam Mayor, and this is pretty straightforward and quite clearly to the point. What really energized me to think about this was two points. We have a flag policy in our municipality for what's appropriate, and making application to municipal staff for, flying flags, which can be approved. And being on the BIA, I think it's come up every year about wanting to do something to make an attractant downtown. And I would think that we can engage a whole lot of people that will have interest in doing some artwork. And so stating that, again, we need to have a policy on what's appropriate, what will be allowed. And I'm sure that staff will come back with a report that's all encompassing about, if an artist spends a lot of time and does a really nice piece, but they got to break up the concrete to get to a water main, it's gone. I mean, they just have to accept that. But that would open up a new canvas, as it were, for someone. So I just think that this could be something that we can engage all ages. I'm really hoping to see if this gets passed. I would really like to see the kids in school come down and do something. And so the motion is that we have a sidewalk art policy, and that we're asking staff to bring back a report with consideration to the sidewalk art, the sidewalk patios, and sidewalk retail. And I'm hoping to have support from my council on that.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Any questions, comments, discussion? Councillor Greenfield?
Thanks, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Bell. Now, the sidewalk patios, we're familiar with them. Sidewalk retail, we've had that. Maybe not so much the last few years, but certainly that was common. Sidewalk art. Now, are we talking about art right on the concrete, or are we talking about little signboards with art on it? And if it is right on the concrete, are we talking chalk, or are we talking paint, or have we got that far yet?
Well, Madam Mayor, to my fellow councillor Greenfield, I think that that's what our staff will go to work with and come back with that, because I do include in my own mind chalk. That if some young people wish to come down and do something from school, and that can be done, and it wears out, so be it. But I also believe that there will be some artists that will really want to do something and showcase something, and right on the cement. And again, Councillor Greenfield, our staff will tell us about what they feel would be appropriate for the medium to be used and the longevity of such. So a simple thing which will have some pretty meaty details, I'm sure.
Well, thanks for that, Councillor Bell. Yeah, it'll be, I think, as all reports are, a challenge for our staff to come up with something that's appropriate. And I guess I'm not much for modern art. To me, art is Charles Russell and Robert Bateman. That's art to me. Some of the new art I find a little risque. Anyway, I'll leave that up to staff to decide. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and I look forward to seeing the word risque in the report. So have fun addressing that, Mr. Smith. And I think this motion is so appropriate, Councillor Bell, thinking of the crosswalk and the discussion regarding that, and the number of individuals in the municipality who stepped forward and said they'd really like to volunteer to be part of that painting. And we know from the discussion around that report that we just weren't quite ready to engage folks in that way yet, that we needed to make sure that that paint would withstand the seasons and the salt and the snow plowing and so on and so forth, and that would be undertaken through the line painting budget. So that was all great. So once we have this in place, I think that will be really welcome to folks who are artistic and who want to engage in this sort of activity downtown. And I know there'll be lots of discussion in the report about how volunteers, whether they're going to need a little training course like they did for gardening, or how that will come together to make this possible. So I appreciate you bringing this forward, Councillor Bell.
Thank you. Anything further? Then I will call a question. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. All right, moving on to adoption of the minutes, the council meeting of September the 13th. I'm going to have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Vickers, thank you. And Councillor Bartley, any comments, errors on that? All right, all in favor? And that is carried. And anything on the communications file that needs to be pulled for further discussion? Councillor Greenfield.
I don't really want to pull anything, Your Worship, but I just advise our council members, if they haven't been keeping track of the Council Remuneration Committee discussion, I find it very interesting.
Thank you. All right, this time, Councillor Vickers.
Are those meetings on YouTube also?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, there's nothing further on the correspondence list. All right. At this time, it is on the agenda that we move into closed session. And we will need to discuss a session with the CAO and clerk in attendance to discuss personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, specifically candidates for appointment to committees. Can I have a mover and a seconder to put that on the table, please? Councillor Kentner and the Deputy Mayor. Thank you. At this time, we will be staying the CAO and the clerk will be in attendance.
So, as with the last meeting, Madam Mayor, we'll recess while we get some technical stuff sorted out, and then we'll come back for the closed session.
Okay. Do we need 15 minutes to recess?
Yes, please.
All right. So back at 24:26.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, they're good. They're good.
All right, we're good? All right, I'd like a mover and a seconder, please, to put bylaw 2021-69 on the table to appoint members of the Economic Development Advisory Committee. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Bell. And this is the bylaw to appoint citizen members to the Economic Development Advisory Committee for the term expiring on November 14th, 2022. The members of this Economic Development Advisory Committee will be Reed Barrett, Eric Innes, Daryl Hindle, Jennifer Linz Murray, Rob Urick, and Evelyn Dean. And this notice will be taken as read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, moving on to the confirming bylaw. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Greenfield, thank you. Councillor Bartley. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-70 is a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Municipality of Meaford at its regular meetings held in the month of September 2021. Be taken as read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed. All in favor? And that is carried. And that brings us to the end of our agenda, and I declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you all. Home early tonight. Thank you to our staff, Matt, and to Rob, Derek, Margaret, thank you. And good night.